Chapter 1654. Rockhart didn't care about Xiao Chun and Yi Zhao's actions at all, as if he was certain that they wouldn't be able to save Wine Daoist. Li Qiu and Gu Feng's eyes flashed with surprise when they heard Rockhart's words. They could sense that Rockhart wasn't bluffing. He was truly confident. As soon as Rockhart finished speaking, an iron pillar slowly rose from the ground behind him. A one-armed man was firmly bound by iron chains on top of the iron pillar. He was none other than their target, Wine Daoist. There were only 8 cells on the 8th floor, so Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao only needed a moment to check all the cells, but they didn't find Wine Daoist. No wonder. So Wine Daoist had been taken out of his cell by Rockhart, just to wait for Li Qiu and Yi Xiao. The iron pillar stood in the center of the 3rd floor and was protected by a formation. Upon seeing the Wine Daoist, Xiao Chun did not say a word and immediately slashed out with his sword, intending to save the Wine Daoist. However, Xiao Chun's sword was unable to get close to the Wine Daoist at all, as it was immediately blocked by the matrix around them. Xiao Chun didn't give up and slashed out several more times. Rockhart sneered. Save it. Even Li Qiu can't break this formation, not to mention a brat like you. Unless you can kill me. Of course, the prerequisite is that you have the ability to do so. Xiao Chun couldn't get close to Wine Daoist at all under the protection of the formation. Wine Daoist looked at Xiao Chun on the verge of death and moved his lips. However, due to the isolation of the formation, Xiao Chun couldn't hear what Wine Daoist was saying. Wine Daoist had indeed seen Xiao Chun within the formation, but because his injuries were too severe and his cultivation was sealed, Wine Daoist didn't have the strength to speak and could only mutter softly. Let's go, let's go. Wine Daoist wanted Xiao Chun to leave as soon as possible. He knew that it would be difficult or even impossible to rescue him from the dark prison. Moreover, Wine Daoist had seen with his own eyes that Rockhart had contacted the will of the heavenly way. Reinforcements from the 7th wilderness should be on their way. Once reinforcements from the 7th wilderness arrived, Xiao Chun and the others wouldn't even be able to protect themselves, let alone save him. When that happened, they would probably all die here. Of course, the Wine Daoist did not care about Li Qiu and the others. After all, until now, the Wine Daoist's loyalty to the will of the heavens was still boundless. In his opinion, the deaths of Li Qiu and the others were not to be regretted. However, Xiao Chun was his disciple, and the Wine Daoist did not want to see Xiao Chun die just like that. He still hoped that one day, Xiao Chun would be able to turn over a new leaf and repent. He kept nagging Xiao Chun to leave, but due to the isolation of the formation, Xiao Chun couldn't hear him at all. Wine Daoist was right in front of them, but they couldn't get close to him. There was only one way to save Wine Daoist, and that was to kill Rockhart. This array formation was controlled by Rockhart. As long as Rockhart was killed, the array formation would collapse on its own. It seemed like there was no way to avoid a battle with Rockhart. Li Qiu glanced at Wine Daoist, who was tied to the iron pillar, and said indifferently, "You two little fellas, go deal with the others." Rockhart, Gu Feng, and Li Qiu were all existences at the great circle of the immortal Emperor realm. Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao weren't qualified to participate in a battle of this level. Therefore, Li Qiu didn't hesitate and sent the 2 of them to help the others. The other experts of the 7th world were engaged in a fierce battle with the 8 living puppets. Some of them had already fallen into a disadvantageous position and seemed to be unable to hold on any longer. After all, one should know that the 8 living puppets were existences at the great circle of the immortal Venerable's realm. This time, not all the experts of the 7th world who came with Xiao Chun were at the great circle of the immortal Venerable's realm. Some of them were only at the great circle of the immortal Venerable's realm. Due to the gap in their cultivation base, the pressure they faced against the 8 living puppets was naturally great. Upon hearing Li Qiu's words, Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao didn't waste any time. They immediately charged towards the 8 living puppets, ready to help the others deal with the 8 puppets. As for Rockhart, they would leave him to Li Qiu and Gu Feng. 2 against 1, Li Qiu and Gu Feng shouldn't have any problems. Given that they were both at the great circle of the immortal Emperor realm, there was no reason why they couldn't defeat Rockhart. It seemed like the outcome of the battle had been decided, but Rockhart wasn't nervous at all. He shifted his gaze from Li Qiu to Gu Feng and sneered with killing intent in his eyes. I've never seen you before. You must be a thief from the Eighth World. Although Rockhart had never seen Gu Feng before, he could still guess his identity. Upon hearing his words, Gu Feng shouted coldly, "Cut the crap. Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish today." Gu Feng was also full of confidence when it was 2 against 1. However, Rockhart smiled faintly and said, "Do you think you can win by fighting 2 against 1? He. Despite knowing that Li Qiu and Gu Feng were both at the Great Circle of the Immortal Emperor Realm, Rockhart wasn't worried at all. As soon as his voice rang out, the power of the formation in the surroundings surged into Rockhart's body. Immediately after, Rockhart's chi became violent and frenzied. His cultivation base was already at the Great Circle of the Immortal Emperor Realm. With the help of the formation, Rockhart's cultivation base seemed to have broken through the Immortal Emperor Realm and entered the Immortal Emperor Realm. His chi was extremely terrifying. Immortal Emperor Realm? Gu Feng's expression turned solemn when he sensed Rockhart's chi rising. Judging from his chi, Rockhart seemed to have broken through the Immortal Emperor Realm and stepped into the Immortal Emperor Realm. However, Li Qiu said in a deep voice when he heard Gu Feng's words, "Not yet. He has merely touched the threshold of the Immortal Emperor Realm through the power of the formation." Rockhart hadn't broken through to the Immortal Emperor Realm yet. He had only touched the threshold of the Immortal Emperor Realm through the power of the formation. Gu Feng heaved a sigh of relief when he heard Li Qiu's words. It was good that Rockhart hadn't broken through to the Immortal Emperor Realm. If Rockhart had really broken through to the Immortal Emperor Realm, everyone present would probably die, including Li Qiu and Gu Feng. After his chi rose to the peak, it gradually calmed down, but it was still terrifying. Rockhart sneered when he sensed the unparalleled power. It's not that easy to reach the Immortal Emperor Realm. Even with the help of the heaven-seizing fortune formation, I've only touched the threshold of the Immortal Emperor Realm. Even so, it's enough to kill the 2 of you. Chapter 1655. There were several immortal grade formations on the 3rd level of the Dark Prison, and the multi-heaven creation formation was one of them. Although it was not considered a top-notch immortal skill formation, the multi-heaven creation formation's effect was heaven-defying. It was similar to a secret technique in that it could increase a cultivator's combat strength and cultivation in a short period of time. Everyone knew about the effect of a secret technique, but as one's cultivation increased, the effect of a secret technique would be negligible for a high-level cultivator, such as a Saint Stage cultivator. If a Saint Stage cultivator was like this, there was no need to talk about the experts above them. Therefore, a secret technique was equivalent to a chicken rib and was completely useless to a high-level cultivator. The heaven-seizing formation of fortune and the secret technique were different methods of achieving the same result. However, unlike the secret technique, the heaven-seizing formation of fortune used the power of the formation to enhance the martial artist's combat power and cultivation. Moreover, as long as the martial artist was within the formation, the enhancement would continue. It could be said that the multi-heaven creation formation had replaced a secret technique. Of course, for a high-level cultivator, the multi-heaven creation formation was the only way to increase their strength. However, the multi-heaven creation formation also had a flaw, which was that it had a huge limitation. Firstly, the cultivator had to carve the formation in advance. Secondly, after carving the formation, the cultivator could not leave the range of the multi-heaven creation formation during the battle. Otherwise, the power of the formation would not be able to continue increasing the cultivator's combat strength. Due to this limitation, the multi-heaven creation formation was not commonly seen. However, the 3rd level of the Dark Prison was very suitable for the multi-heaven creation formation. Because the area of the 3rd floor of the Black Dungeon wasn't large to begin with, and it wasn't spacious either, there was no way out. Thus, fighting here was equivalent to being in the heaven-seizing fortune formation at all times, and there was no need to worry about leaving the formation while fighting. It could be said that the third level of the Dark Prison was specially designed for the multi-heaven creation formation. His aura was extremely terrifying. Although he had not reached the Immortal Emperor realm, he had already touched the threshold of the Immortal Emperor realm. Li Qiu and Gu Feng had a grave expression in their eyes when they saw Yin Xin. Originally, Li Qiu would definitely win. But now, with the activation of the heaven-seizing fortune array and Rockhart's explosive increase in strength, it was hard to say who would win. Sensing the heaviness in Li Qiu and Gu Feng's hearts, Rockhart sneered. "I've already said that since you're here today, don't even think about leaving." Without waiting for Li Qiu and Gu Feng's reply, Rockhart chose to make his move. He took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of Li Qiu and Gu Feng. Both of his palms stretched out and transformed into claws that violently grabbed at the two of them. Dragon's subduing seal. Heartcliff let out a deep growl, and a green radiance shone from his claws. At the same time, his spiritual energy coalesced into an enormous dragon claw. The dragon subduing seal was a third great immortal skill that was extremely powerful. Facing Li Qiu and Gu Feng at the same time, Rockhart wouldn't let his guard down. After all, the two of them weren't ordinary people. Their cultivation bases had both reached the great perfection Immortal Emperor realm. In the face of Rockhart's attack, Li Qiu and Gu Feng naturally wouldn't wait for their deaths. They simultaneously launched their own attacks that collided fiercely with Rockhart's claws. The three of them clashed head-on, and Rockhart was more suitable to fight against the two of them. However, the final result was unexpected. Rockhart didn't seem to be in a disadvantageous position at all. Instead, he seemed to be suppressing Li Qiu and Gu Feng. In a head-on collision, Rockhart was forced back 3 steps, while Li Qiu and Gu Feng were forced back 7 steps. Although the three of them didn't suffer any injuries, it was apparent that Rockhart had the upper hand. With the help of the heaven-seizing fortune array, Rockhart's strength had indeed increased significantly. Without the heaven-seizing fortune array, it would have been impossible for Rockhart to fight Li Qiu and Gu Feng alone, let alone gain the upper hand. After gaining the upper hand in a head-on clash, Rockhart did not give Li Qiu and Gu Feng any time to catch their breaths as he once again charged forward. Immediately, the three of them engaged in a great battle. Xiaochen also noticed that Li Qiu and Gu Feng were gradually being suppressed by Rockhart during the fierce battle between the 3 great perfection Immortal Emperor Realm experts. Although Xiaochen was anxious, he knew very well that he wasn't qualified to participate in such a battle. Even if he wanted to, he was powerless to do so. If Xiaochen joined the battle, he wouldn't be able to withstand even a casual attack from Rockhart. Moreover, Xiaochen and an expert from the 7th world were fighting against a living puppet. The expert from the 7th realm, who was attacking the living puppet with Xiaochen, was a middle-aged man with a cultivation base of the lesser completion celestial venerable realm. Because his cultivation base was weaker than the living puppet, he was completely suppressed in the beginning. It wasn't until Xiaochen came to help that the two of them were able to fight against the puppet. Of course, Xiaochen only helped the middle-aged man to share some of the pressure while he looked for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack on the puppet. With Xiaochen's cultivation base, he naturally wasn't qualified to fight against the puppet. After all, Xiaochen was only at the immortal realm. Most of the time, it was the middle-aged man who fought against the puppet, while Xiaochen looked for an opportunity to attack from the side. Although the two of them were able to fight against the puppet, they couldn't find a way to defeat it. The puppet had retained all kinds of martial techniques, immortal skills, and combat awareness. Coupled with its terrifying physical defense, it was difficult for Xiaochen and the middle-aged man to find an opportunity to defeat it. He began to feel anxious. He couldn't let this drag on any longer. Li Qiu and Gu Feng's situation was obviously not good. Both of them were great perfection immortal emperors. If both of them were defeated, it was imaginable what would happen to the rest of them. He had to find a way to support Li Qiu and Gu Feng, but before that, he had to get rid of the living puppet in front of him. While constantly looking for an opportunity to attack, he was also secretly observing the puppet. It was no different from a living person, except that it didn't have any qi but its cultivation base was still preserved. Cultivation base? Thinking of this, Xiao Chun suddenly realized something. Then, with an attitude of giving it a try, Xiao Chun slashed out with his sword, using the Netherworld sword chant. The attack went straight for the abdomen of the puppet, where the divine residence was located. Since its cultivation base was preserved and it was refined from a living body, it must be different from ordinary puppets. I just don't know if the immortal mansion of this living puppet has been preserved. Xiao Chun guessed in his heart. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 1656. Xiao Chun slashed his sword at the puppet's divine residence. He did not know if the divine residences of these living puppets still existed after they were refined, but he would find out after giving it a try. With the expert from the seventh realm entangling with him, Xiao Chen's attack hit the abdomen of the living puppet without any accident. As Xiao Chen's attack hit, the puppet's aura suddenly became frantic, but it only lasted for a moment before it returned to normal. Seeing this, Xiao Chun was overjoyed. Sure enough, the immortal mansions were still intact. In this way, if he could destroy the immortal mansions, he could severely injure the puppet. However, judging from the attack just now, Xiao Chen's current strength was not enough to break the physical defense of the living puppet. Therefore, he had to join forces with the expert from the seventh realm. Without thinking too much, Xiao Chun shouted in a deep voice, "Attack its immortal mansions." Hearing Xiao Chen's words, the expert from the seventh realm understood what Xiao Chen meant. Moreover, he had seen Xiao Chen's attack hit the puppet's immortal mansions with his own eyes. It was indeed effective, but Xiao Chen's attack was too weak to break the puppet's physical defense. With a target in mind, the expert from the seventh realm no longer rashly attacked. He fought with the puppet while looking for the best opportunity. Xiao Chun did the same. Although he would attack from time to time, it was just to share some of the pressure with the expert from the seventh realm. Both of them were waiting for an opportunity. In the midst of the fierce battle, the puppet suddenly threw out a punch. Seeing this, the cultivator from the seventh realm immediately dodged. He successfully dodged the attack. At the same time, the abdomen of the puppet's immortal mansions was exposed to the expert from the seventh realm and Xiao Chun. In the face of such an opportunity, Xiao Chun and the expert from the seventh realm naturally wouldn't miss it. They immediately unleashed their strongest attacks at the same time. Xiao Chun slashed out with his sword, displaying the sword technique of 9 serenities. The cultivator from the seventh realm slapped out with his palm, also aiming for the puppet's abdomen. Both of them had the same target, the puppet's immortal mansions. As their attacks hit one after another, the puppet's aura became violent again. Its aura became extremely unstable. At the same time, perhaps because the immortal mansions were severely damaged, the puppet's movements also came to a halt. Upon sensing the changes in the puppet, Xiao Chun didn't hesitate and immediately shouted. Again, their all-out attacks weren't able to destroy the puppet's immortal mansions in one fell swoop, but they did inflict serious damage. While the puppet was in a daze, they continued to attack. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's command, the expert from the seventh realm didn't hesitate at all. Just like Xiao Chun, he launched another attack. Then, their attacks bombarded the immortal mansions in the puppet's abdomen. After being severely damaged twice in a row, the puppet's immortal mansions emitted a sound as though space was shattering. Upon hearing the sound, Xiao Chun and the expert from the seventh realm were delighted. Their attacks became more violent, and they only had one target, the immortal mansions in the puppet's abdomen. Xiao Chun and the expert from the seventh realm launched their attacks one after another. After more than 10 rounds, the puppet's immortal mansions were finally shattered by them. After the immortal mansions were shattered, the puppet's aura instantly dropped to the lowest point. It was apparent that it was severely injured. Naturally, Xiao Chun and the expert from the seventh realm wouldn't miss this opportunity. They attacked together and defeated the puppet quickly. After finally defeating one puppet, the expert from the seventh realm heaved a sigh of relief. He didn't stop and immediately went to help the others. Now that he had defeated one puppet, it was time to follow up the victory and end the battle as soon as possible. While the expert from the seventh realm went to help the others, Xiao Chun watched the battle between Yin Xing, Li Qiu, and Gu Feng from a distance. Xiao Chun knew that the outcome of the battle between the three of them was the most crucial. Even if everyone managed to defeat the 8 living puppets in the end, if Li Qiu and Gu Feng were defeated, the outcome would not be good. As he watched the fierce battle, Xiao Chen's heart sank. It was obvious that Yin Xing had the upper hand in the battle. Although Li Qiu and Gu Feng were still fighting fiercely with Yin Xing was gradually suppressing Li Qiu and Gu Feng. It was difficult to determine the victor in a short period of time. However, if this continued, it would be bad news for everyone. Xiao Chun didn't think that Yin Xing didn't inform the will of the heavenly way about what had happened here. Perhaps the reinforcements from the seventh wilderness were already on their way. Therefore, they had to rescue Wine Taoist and retreat before the reinforcements arrived. However, judging from the current situation, it wouldn't be easy for Li Qiu and Gu Feng to defeat Yin Xing. The three of them were in a stalemate. Although Rockhart had the upper hand, it would still be very difficult for him to defeat Li Qiu and Gu Feng. As for Li Qiu and Gu Feng, they were gradually being suppressed by Rockhart. It would be even more difficult for them to win. The stalemate continued. Xiao Chun was very anxious about this. After all, there wasn't much time left for them. Although he wanted to help, Xiao Chun wasn't qualified to intervene in a battle between immortal emperors. Given Xiao Chun's cultivation base, the aftermath of a battle between immortal emperors was enough to make Xiao Chun unable to withstand it. Xiao Chun was secretly anxious. His blood-red eyes stared fixedly at the three of them as he searched for a way to win. It was impossible for him to directly participate in the battle. Otherwise, not even his bones would be left. But since he couldn't participate, what could he do to turn the situation around? Create an excellent opportunity for Li Qiu and Gu Feng. While pondering, Xiao Chun suddenly thought of the spiritual slash. This was the innate ability of the heavenly Tao sword embryo. Along with Xiao Chen's breakthrough to the immortal realm, its power had skyrocketed. Spiritual attacks were impossible to guard against. Moreover, Xiao Chun didn't think that the spiritual slash would be able to severely injure Yin Xing. However, as long as Yin Xing was distracted for a split second, it would be enough to create an excellent opportunity for Li Qiu and Gu Feng. Thinking up to this point, Xiao Chun secretly waited for an opportunity to arrive. His eyes were fixed on the battle between the three of them. Xiao Chun's plan was very simple. He wanted to use Soul Slash to create an excellent opportunity for Li Qiu and Gu Feng to kill Harcliffe in one fell swoop. Even if they couldn't succeed, they had to at least severely injure him. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1657. With his current cultivation base and combat strength, Xiao Chun wasn't qualified to participate in the battle. The three of them were all at the great perfection immortal emperor realm. Xiao Chun will be nothing more than cannon fodder if he joined the battle. However, even though he couldn't join the battle directly, he could still create an excellent opportunity for Li Qiu and Gu Feng with his Soul Slash if the timing was right. Xiao Chun didn't act rashly. He wanted to wait until Rockhart let down his guard. Only then would the effect of the Soul Slash be unleashed to its maximum. Xiao Chun's eyes were fixed on the three of them. The battle between the three of them was getting more and more intense. About 15 minutes later, he finally found his chance. Rockhart, Li Qiu, and Gu Feng collided head-on and were pushed back at the same time. At this moment, traces of blood could be seen at the corners of Gu Feng and Li Qiu's mouths. Apparently, they were injured by the collision. Although Rockhart was in a better condition and didn't vomit blood, his chi and blood were in turmoil. It took him a lot of effort to suppress it. However, Harcliffe clearly did not expect that Xiao Chun, who had been waiting for an opportunity, would suddenly make his move after the three of them clashed. Xiao Chun seemed to be casually swinging his sword and instantly using the Soul Slash. The formless sword edge rushed towards Rockhart. Since Rockhart was caught off guard, the Soul Slash penetrated into his mind and struck his soul viciously. Given Rockhart's strength, Xiao Chen's soul slash might not be able to inflict serious injuries on him. However, he still felt an intense pain. As the intense pain appeared, Yin Xian's movements came to a halt. When Li Qiu and Gu Feng saw this scene, how could they let go of this opportunity? Without any hesitation, the two of them attacked together. Immediately, they used their strongest attacks to viciously hit Yin Xian. His entire body was blasted away, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. It was obvious that he was severely injured. Rockheart was severely injured by Li Qiu and Gu Feng because he was distracted for a short moment. The instigator of all this was naturally Xiao Chun. Seeing that Li Qiu and Gu Feng had instantly understood his intentions and dealt a heavy blow to Heartcliff, a hint of a smile flashed across Xiao Chen's eyes. It was obvious that Li Qiu and Gu Feng had not held back in their attacks. Even if they did not manage to kill Heartcliff, they had still managed to severely injure him. As for the heavily injured Heartcliff, he naturally wasn't a match for Li Qiu and Gu Feng. It could be said that Xiao Chen's soul slash had changed the situation of the battle, instantly causing Heartcliff to fall from the upper hand to rock bottom. There was still blood at the corner of his mouth, and his aura was much weaker. Due to his absent-mindedness, Yin Xian struggled to stand up after being sent flying by Li Qiu and Gu Feng's attacks. His eyes were filled with coldness, and he immediately locked his gaze onto Xiao Chun. Knowing that the previous soul slash had come from Xiao Chun, Yin Xian had never imagined that he would be tricked by a brat. If it wasn't for Xiao Chun, Yin Xian wouldn't have been injured at all. Moreover, it was such a serious injury. Although Xiao Chen's attack hadn't managed to injure Yin Xian, it had created an excellent opportunity for Li Qiu and Gu Feng. An extremely cold, killing intent flickered in Yin Xian's eyes. He wanted nothing more than to tear Xiao Chen apart. Despicable brat. However, Li Qiu and Gu Feng obviously wouldn't give Yin Xian the chance to do so. After their successful attacks, the two of them didn't give Yin Xian any time to catch his breath. They immediately attacked Yin Xian. The situation had completely changed. Due to his heavy injuries, Yin Xian's battle power was naturally affected. Therefore, even with the heaven-seizing fortune array, Yin Xian was still at a disadvantage. The heaven-seizing fortune array could increase a cultivator's battle power, but didn't have the ability to heal injuries. Moreover, Li Qiu and Gu Feng clearly didn't plan on stalling for time. Hence, they didn't give Yin Xian the slightest chance. Take advantage of your weakness. This was Li Qiu and Gu Feng's plan. Since Xiao Chun had created such an excellent opportunity for the two of them to severely injure Yin Xian, the next step was to kill him in the shortest time possible. The situation had completely changed. Li Qiu and Gu Feng now had the absolute advantage. Although Yin Xian was still bitterly holding on, it was only a matter of time before he was defeated and killed. After all, no matter how strong Yin Xian was, how long could he last while fighting while injured? Xiao Chen no longer paid any attention to Yin Xian. He knew that Li Qiu and Gu Feng would only deal with him. At this moment, Xiao Chun turned around and attacked the other puppets. Xiao Chen didn't care about Yin Xian anymore. It was better for him to help the others deal with the puppets first. Facing Li Qiu and Gu Feng's joint attack, Yin Xian grew more and more sullen. He had never imagined that he would be defeated by a brat who was only at the initial immortal stage. It should be known that if it weren't for Xiao Chen's sword, Yin Xian wouldn't have been injured at all. Moreover, Gu Feng and Li Qiu wouldn't have had such a great advantage. But now, due to his serious injuries, Yin Xian gradually felt that his strength was falling short of his desire. It was very difficult for him to contend with Li Qiu and Gu Feng. The battle continued. However, due to Xiao Chen's previous attack, the situation had changed drastically. The remaining puppets were quickly defeated one by one under everyone's combined efforts. As for Rockhart, he was in an increasingly perilous situation as he was besieged by Li Qiu and Gu Feng. 4 hours later, the 8 puppets were defeated by Xiao, Chun, and the others. Although everyone had suffered some injuries, it wasn't a big deal. Now that the puppets had been defeated, only Yin Xian was left. Looking at Yin Xian, who was still struggling, no one showed any mercy. Although they didn't dare to fight Yin Xian head-on, they could still launch sneak attacks from afar. For a time, Xiao Chun, Yi Xiao, and the other experts of the Seventh Realm launched their attacks at Yin Xian. On one hand, he had to face the all-out attacks of Li Qiu and Gu Feng, and, on the other hand, he had to deal with the sneak attacks of Xiao Chun and the others. For a time, the pressure on Yin Xian grew even greater. One attack after another landed on Yin Xian's body. Although Yin Xian wasn't afraid of immortal venerables with his cultivation base, the continuous attacks did cause him a lot of damage. Moreover, Yin Xian was already seriously injured. His injuries were getting worse and worse. Although Rockhard had been bitterly holding on, after 2 hours, Rockhard had reached the point of exhaustion and was killed by the combined attacks of everyone. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 1658. It was absolutely impossible for Rockhard to be killed by them, given his strength. Even if he wasn't a match for them, he would definitely be able to hold on until the reinforcements from the Seventh Wilderness arrived with the help of the Heaven-Seizing Fortune Formation. Unfortunately, everything changed because of Xiao Chen's sword strike. It was because of Xiao Chen's sword strike that Rockhard was severely injured by Li Qiu and Gu Feng. Ever since then, Rockhard had been in a passive state and his injuries worsened. It could be said that Xiao Chen's sword had changed the final outcome of the battle. Even Rockhard himself probably didn't expect that the one who had caused such an outcome would be a junior at the lesser mastery of the immortal realm. A mighty figure at the perfect immortal emperor realm was killed by the joint attack of the group. Of course, the ones who dealt the fatal blow to Rockhard were naturally Li Qiu and Gu Feng. As for the others, they were just icing on the cake. After Rockhard's death, the formation on the 3rd floor of the dark prison dissipated immediately, including the formation that shrouded Taoist wine. In a flash, Xiao Chen arrived before Taoist wine. Without a word, he slashed the iron chain that bound Taoist wine. The chains were cut apart, and the wine Taoist body fell limply to the ground. Xiao Chen, who had been prepared for this, quickly caught him. Xiao Chen looked at the wine Taoist, who was covered in wounds and had only one arm left, as he supported him. Xiao Chen felt a little sad. But compared to Xiao Chen, Taoist wine didn't seem to mind as he smiled. Xiao Chen, deep down, Taoist wine wasn't happy that he was saved. After all, the people who came to save him were the enemies of the Seventh Realm. At this moment, Taoist wine leaned on Xiao Chen weakly and called out to Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen, repent and be saved. Return to the Seventh Wilderness. This is Master's final wish. Wine Taoist didn't care about his own life anymore. He didn't want to leave with the people of the Seventh Realm. In his heart, he would rather die than betray the Seventh Wilderness and betray the will of the Great Path. Therefore, Taoist wine's last hope was that Xiao Chen would repent and be saved and stop helping the evildoers. Xiao Chen did not care about the people from the Seventh Realm at all. Xiao Chen did not argue with the wine Taoist. After feeding him a healing pill, the wine Taoist slowly fell into a coma. It was naturally Xiao Chen's doing to make Taoist wine fall into a coma. Xiao Chen was aware of Taoist wine's loyalty to the heavenly way of the Seventh Wilderness. Therefore, Xiao Chen knew that Taoist wine wouldn't follow him back to the Seventh Realm. However, there was no time to reason with Taoist wine. Everyone had to leave the Black Prison as soon as possible. Therefore, Xiao Chen directly knocked Taoist wine out, carried him on his back, and said to everyone, "Let's go." Although they had rescued Taoist wine, they weren't safe yet. After all, they hadn't escaped from the Black Prison yet. They couldn't let their guard down. After hearing Xiao Chen's words, everyone nodded slightly. Then, the group immediately left the Black Tower. Rockhart and the other two who were in charge of guarding the Black Prison had been killed by everyone. The remaining puppets were nothing to be afraid of. Therefore, there wasn't much obstruction along the way. They quickly rushed out of the Black Prison. After rushing out of the Black Prison, everyone didn't care about their injuries. Although everyone was injured, now wasn't the time to worry about that. The most important thing was to leave the Black Prison. They directly rushed to the exit of the small world where the Black Prison was located. While everyone was evacuating, the seventh will of the heavenly way appeared at the entrance of the small world where the black prison was located. He had received a message from Rockhart saying that the people from the seventh realm had appeared in the black prison and had broken through to the second level. After receiving the news, the seventh will of the heavenly way naturally couldn't sit back and do nothing. He immediately gathered many experts from the seventh will of the heavenly way and rushed to the black prison. Along the way, the seventh will of the heavenly way felt that everyone was too slow. Therefore, he sent someone to the black prison first. The seventh will of the heavenly way couldn't let the people from the seventh realm escape. Standing at the entrance of the small world where the black prison was located, the seventh will of the heavenly way had an ugly expression on his face. He could clearly feel that someone had torn a hole in the formation protecting the black prison. A murderous intent flashed in his eyes. In the seventh will of the heavenly way's opinion, the people from the seventh realm were too bold. Most importantly, the seventh will of the heavenly way had obviously guessed the whole story. Everyone must have come to save the wine Taoist, and the reason they came was definitely because of Shao Chun. The seventh will of the heavenly way's initial disregard for Shao Chun had evolved into a strong murderous intent. In the eyes of the seventh baron's will of the heavenly path, Shao Chun was nothing more than an insignificant ant. However, that ant had managed to injure it. It was precisely because he was injured by Shao Chun that the seventh and eighth realms were able to gain a foothold on the seventh mainland. Now, it would be very difficult for him to defeat them again. Previously, he had suffered a great loss because of Shao Chun. This time, Shao Chun actually dared to bring people to the black prison to save people. In the eyes of the seventh will of the heavenly way, this was already intolerable. Therefore, no matter what, he had to kill Shao Chun today. He had already made up his mind to kill Shao Chun. However, as soon as the seventh will of the heavenly way appeared, a beautiful woman in a bright red palace dress slowly appeared in front of him in the originally empty starry sky. Looking at the beautiful woman, the seventh will of the heavenly way's eyes flashed with a strange glint, and he said in an extremely cold tone, "Red Lotus." The beautiful woman was Red Lotus. She had promised Shao Chun that she would take action, but she hadn't shown up all this time. In fact, Red Lotus had rushed over after Shao Chun and the others entered the black prison small world, but she didn't take action. In her opinion, if the seventh will of the heavenly way didn't come, then there was no need for her to take action, because the strength of Shao Chun and the others was enough to deal with the guards in the black prison. Red Lotus' mission was to deal with the seventh will of the heavenly way. Therefore, when the will of the heavenly way appeared, Red Lotus also appeared in front of him. Compared to the coldness of the seventh will of the heavenly way, Red Lotus had a charming smile on her face and said in a gentle voice, "Seventh will of the heavenly way, we've already saved this person. Why don't you do me a favor and forget about it? Anyway, that wine Taoist isn't an immortal emperor. There's nothing wrong with giving him to our Hachibara Senkai, right? Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 1659. Hong Lian had been waiting here for a long time. If the seventh desolate will of the heavenly way didn't come, she wouldn't have shown herself. But now that the seventh desolate will of the heavenly way was here, Hong Lian would naturally stop him and allow Shao Chun and the others to leave safely. Looking at Hong Lian and hearing her words, the killing intent in the seventh desolate will of the heavenly way's eyes intensified. Today, he had made up his mind to kill Shao Chun. He would kill anyone who tried to stop him. He should have killed Shao Chun the first time, but Luo Li suddenly appeared and took Shao Chun away. However, after missing that opportunity, the seventh desolate will of the heavenly way realized that although Shao Chun's cultivation base was no different from an ant in his eyes, Shao Chun was always able to make him suffer losses. Moreover, Shao Chun had spoiled his plans several times. This made the seventh desolate will of the heavenly way feel as if he had just swallowed a fly. A mere ant was able to make the seventh desolate will of the heavenly way suffer losses again and again. This was something that the seventh desolate will of the heavenly way would never allow. Therefore, he had to kill Shao Chun today, no matter what. In the seventh desolate will of the heavenly way, Shao Chun was a person who deserved to die. Due to various reasons, he had allowed Shao Chun to survive until now. But this time, the seventh desolate will of the heavenly way would never allow Shao Chun to leave this place alive. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared at Hong Lian. To be honest, the seventh desolate will of the heavenly way didn't expect Hong Lian to appear here. After all, it was just to save Wine Daoist. There was no need for an immortal emperor like Hong Lian to take action. Naturally, the seventh desolate will of the heavenly way didn't know that the reason why Hong Lian agreed to help was because of her daughter. Otherwise, she wouldn't be interested in these matters, let alone saving an immortal venerable. Facing the heavenly Tao, sword embryo's murderous gaze, Hong Lian did not change her expression at all. She still had a charming smile on her face. When their eyes met, a door of light appeared. Shao Chun and the others, who had rushed out of the black prison, walked out of the door of light and appeared before the seventh Baron's will of the heavenly path in Red Lotus. As soon as they ran out of the dark prison small world, they saw the seventh wasteland's will of the heavenly way. Everyone was stunned at first, but they soon noticed Hong Lian, who was also there. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that Hong Lian was also present. If it wasn't for Hong Lian, then none of them would have been able to escape today. Previously, he had not seen Red Lotus. Now that Red Lotus had appeared, Shao Chun, like the others, secretly breathed a sigh of relief. With Hong Lian blocking the seventh wasteland's will of the heavenly way, they could take the opportunity to escape. Shao Chun and the others shifted their gaze between the will of the heavenly way and Hong Lian. The seventh will of the heavenly way had locked his gaze on Shao Chun from the beginning. In his opinion, anyone could leave today except for Shao Chun. No matter what, Shao Chun must die here today. The murderous intent in his eyes wasn't concealed at all. At the same time, Shao Chun felt like he had fallen into an ice cellar when facing the murderous intent that erupted from the will of the heavenly way. However, his gaze didn't falter at all. In terms of the murderous intent and hatred in his heart, Shao Chun was definitely not inferior to the seventh will of the heavenly way. This was because such a handsome and godlike existence in the eyes of all living beings was a ferocious beast that had killed his family. It could be said that he had an irreconcilable hatred with the seventh will of the heavenly way. Shao Chun didn't have the strength to contend with him now. Otherwise, Shao Chun would definitely fight to the death with the seventh will of the heavenly way. A mere ant actually dared to look him in the eye. Moreover, the hatred in his eyes was as if he wanted to tear him apart. Seeing the intense, murderous intent and hatred in Shao Chun's eyes, the seventh will of the heavenly way directly slammed his palm towards Shao Chun without any warning. As the will of the heavenly way, the seventh will of the heavenly way actually launched a sneak attack against Shao Chun. From this, it could be seen how much the seventh will of the heavenly way wanted to kill Shao Chun. As the seventh will of the heavenly way attacked, Shao Chun immediately felt the aura of death rushing towards him. Facing the seventh will of the heavenly way, Shao Chun naturally didn't have the strength to fight back. However, just as the attack was about to form, Elegant Red appeared in front of Shao Chun and also slammed her palm out, blocking the seventh will of the heavenly way's attack for Shao Chun. The great will of the heavenly way actually used a sneak attack against a junior in the initial immortal realm. TSK. Seventh will of the heavenly way, you've really opened my eyes. The seventh desolate's actions were indeed a little degrading, and Hong Lian didn't hide the mockery in her words. Hearing Hong Lian's words, the seventh will of the heavenly way had no intention of defending himself. He said indifferently, "Today, Shao Chun must die. Shao Chun must die." This was the seventh will of the heavenly way's bottom line. As soon as he finished speaking, without waiting for Hong Lian's reply, the seventh will of the heavenly way immediately attacked. Hong Lian naturally didn't hesitate to meet him. While fighting the seventh will of the heavenly way, Hong Lian said to everyone, "What are you standing there for? Run." Hong Lian naturally didn't want to fight the seventh will of the heavenly way to the death. After all, it wasn't easy for either of them to kill the other. Hong Lian's goal was only to delay the seventh will of the heavenly way and give Shao Chun and the others enough time to retreat. Once everyone reached a safe place, Hong Lian would naturally find an opportunity to retreat. Everyone who was still in a daze came back to their senses when they heard Hong Lian's words. Without any hesitation, they immediately flew into the distance. Seeing that Shao Chun was about to leave with the wine Taoist on his back, the seventh will of the heavenly way's killing intent completely exploded. The seventh Baron's will of the heavenly path did not seem to care about Red Lotus' attack at all. He did not even try to dodge the attack. Instead, he stared at Shao Chun with murderous intent in his eyes. Then, he pointed at Shao Chun, and a beam of five-colored light shot toward him. The seventh will of the heavenly way was determined to kill Shao Chun, even if he had to take Hong Lian's attack head-on and risk being injured. Red Lotus did not expect the seventh Baron's will of the heavenly path to be so intent on killing Shao Chun. She did not expect the seventh Baron's will of the heavenly path to be so intent on killing Shao Chun. Hong Lian's attack hit the seventh will of the heavenly way's chest hard. At the same time, the seventh will of the heavenly way's five-colored light shot toward Shao Chun. Seeing this, it was already too late for Hong Lian to stop the seventh will of the heavenly way. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Chapter 1660. No one had expected the seventh will of the heavenly way to be so determined to kill Shao Chun even at the cost of his own injuries. In fact, Red Lotus had been guarding against the seventh will of the heavenly way since the beginning. However, she had never expected the seventh will of the heavenly way to be so determined to kill Shao Chun. He was determined to kill Shao Chun even if he had to risk getting himself injured. It was clear that he had made up his mind to kill Shao Chun. There was no way to stop it. They could only watch as the five-colored finger beam shot toward Shao Chun. In the blink of an eye, the five-colored finger beam had already arrived in front of Shao Chun. Although this was only a casual attack from the seventh will of the heavenly way, it was definitely not something Shao Chun could block. If this attack landed, one could only imagine what would happen to Shao Chun. Li Qiu, Gu Feng, and the others also wanted to save Shao Chun, but they could not do anything in time. Seeing the five-colored finger beam getting closer and closer, Shao Chun felt that it was over. However, at this moment, a light blue barrier suddenly appeared and enveloped Shao Chun and Wine Taoist at the same time. This light blue barrier firmly protected Shao Chun, Wine Taoist, and the others. Then, the five-colored finger beam violently bombarded the barrier. Immediately, cracks appeared on the barrier. However, no one had expected the light blue barrier to withstand the attack from the seventh will of the heavenly way. It was true that the light blue light shield had withstood the attack of the five-colored finger light. Although the light blue light shield had shattered right after the five-colored finger light disappeared, it was undeniable that it had blocked the attack for Shao Chun. Because of the light blue barrier's protection, Shao Chun and Wine Taoist were not injured. It could be said that he had escaped death. Just as the light blue light disappeared, everyone's gaze turned towards Yi Zhao's direction. Just now, Yi Zhao had used his life-saving magic treasure to successfully resolve Shao Chun's crisis. At this moment, when he realized that everyone was looking at him, Yi Zhao immediately laughed loudly. "Haha, brother Shao Chun, you don't have to thank me. You're my brother. I can't let anything happen to you." He was showing off again. Hearing Yi Zhao's words, everyone was already used to it. However, they were all secretly grateful to Yi Zhao. If Yi Zhao had not acted in time, Shao Chun and Wine Taoist would probably be dead. However, apart from being grateful, everyone was also secretly shocked. Even Shao Chun was the same. as expected of a veteran Hachibara Senkai's heir. Compared to Xiao Chun, an heir who had only recently joined, Yi Zhao's foundation was clearly much stronger. He even had a life-saving trump card that could block the will of the Heavenly Way. Although he had only blocked one attack, this was already heaven-defying enough. At least, Xiao Chun did not have such a life-saving trump card. Otherwise, Xiao Chun would not have been so powerless just now. He had lived in the 8th realm since he was young and had been raised as an heir by Red Lotus and the other experts of the 8th realm. It was not hard to imagine how many life-saving trump cards Yi Xiao had. Perhaps one day, when Yi Xiao was hunted down by the will of the Heavenly Way, he could use this endless life-saving trump card to deal with it. He did not dare to say that he could save his life. After all, the will of the Heavenly Way's strength was obvious. However, it should not be a problem to deal with it and stall for time. In comparison, Xiao Chun was probably the weakest of the 8 heirs of Hachibara Senkai. Although Xiao Chun had many life-saving trump cards, in terms of quality, they could not be compared to Yi Zhao's at all. However, this cannot be blamed on Xiao Chun. After all, Xiao Chun had only become the heir of the 7th realm for a little more than a year. Naturally, this could not be compared to Yi Xiao, who had grown up in the 8th realm. After successfully saving Xiao Chun, Yi Xiao was extremely smug. At the same time, on the other side, the 7th wilderness will of the Heavenly Way's eyes were filled with unwillingness. Earlier, he had taken Red Lotus's attack head-on to kill Xiao Chun at the cost of getting injured. This was already the best chance. Who knew that Yi Xiao would ruin it in the end? Unwillingness and murderous intent mixed in his eyes. He looked at Xiao Chun with a complicated expression. He did not want to admit it, but he had to admit that the 7th wilderness will of the Heavenly Way had missed the best chance to kill Xiao Chun. Damn it, he could not help cursing under his breath. However, at the same time, Red Lotus had already attacked. Since Xiao Chun was fine, Red Lotus was completely relieved. After what had just happened, Red Lotus would not give the 7th wilderness will of the Heavenly Way any chance to attack Xiao Chun again. Red Lotus smirked and said, "7th wilderness, it seems that you are destined to return disappointed today. You can't kill Xiao Chun." Hearing this, the 7th wilderness will of the Heavenly Way's eyes flashed with anger. However, he did not say anything. He immediately attacked and clashed with Red Lotus. He knew that Red Lotus was telling the truth. He had no chance to attack Xiao Chun again. Or rather, Red Lotus would not give him such a chance again. After saving his life, Red Lotus and the 7th wilderness will of the Heavenly Way started fighting again. Yi Xiao came to Xiao Chen's side with a smile on his face. He proudly put his arm around Xiao Chen's shoulder and laughed loudly. Brother Xiao Chun, you owe me your life. Tell me, how do you plan to repay me? However, you and I are still brothers. Don't talk about repaying me. Forget it. Just treat me to a drink." Xiao Chen did not respond to Yi Zhao's words. Instead, Gu Feng came to Yi Zhao's side and punched Yi Zhao's head fiercely without saying a word. "That's enough. Don't you know what time it is? Stop showing off. Let's go." After being viciously beaten up by Gu Feng, Yi Xiao immediately became dispirited. There was no other way. Who asked Gu Feng to be his nemesis? Although Yi Xiao was very cocky and liked to act tough, Gu Feng's fist was very painful. In order to avoid physical pain, Gu Feng could only forcefully suppress the urge to act tough in his heart. He obediently responded and immediately left with the crowd. With the crisis resolved, everyone flashed and quickly disappeared into the starry sky. This time, the 7th wilderness will of the Heavenly Way did not have a chance to attack Xiao Chun. Red Lotus was watching him closely and did not give him the slightest chance. The 7th wilderness will of the Heavenly Way was furious as he watched Xiao Chun slip away under his nose again. He was just an ant. Why? Why couldn't he kill him time and time again? The 7th wilderness will of the Heavenly Way roared in his heart, begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1661. Xiao Chen's group had already left. No matter how angry the 7th will of the Heavenly Way was, there was nothing he could do. Furthermore, Hong Lian was holding him back. He had no way of chasing after Xiao Chen's group. Hong Lian had no intention of stopping. After Xiao Chen's group left, Hong Lian continued to fight with the seventh will of the heavenly way in order to buy more time for Xiao Chen's group and ensure their safety. With Hong Lian holding off the seventh will of the heavenly way, Xiao Chen's group naturally rushed towards the seventh mainland. They were not too worried about Hong Lian's safety. After all, Hong Lian was the realm lord of the eighth realm, an immortal emperor expert. She was extremely powerful. It was basically impossible for the seventh will of the heavenly way to take her down. Moreover, in order to kill Xiao Chun, the seventh will of the heavenly way did not hesitate to take on Hong Lian's attack. Now that he was injured, the seventh will of the heavenly way was even less of a threat to Hong Lian. Therefore, there was no need to worry about Hong Lian's safety at all. Their most important task now was to return safely to the seventh realm's Black Palace. This was because they would only be considered to have successfully rescued Wine Daoist after returning to the seventh realm's Black Palace. Before that, they were not considered to be safe. Yi Xiao naturally followed closely behind Xiao Chun as they sped towards the seventh mainland. Perhaps it was because he had just saved Xiao Chen's life, but Yi Xiao seemed very excited. He kept bragging to Xiao Chun, "Brother Xiao Chun, you owe me a drink. Remember that. By the way, Brother Xiao Chun, can we be considered as friends who have gone through life and death together? After all, I did save you earlier." Moreover, every sentence seemed to be specifically reminding Xiao Chun not to forget that I saved your life just now. I am your savior. Knowing Yi Xiao's personality, Xiao Chun felt helpless about this, but he was not angry at all, because Xiao Chun knew that Yi Xiao only said that because he liked to show off. He just wanted to show off in front of him. Yi Xiao would not do such a thing, nor would she do such a thing. She simply wanted to show off in front of Xiao Chun. Along the way, he kept listening to Yi Xiao's endless chatter. In the end, Xiao Chun couldn't help but say angrily, "All right, I owe you my life. When we get back, I'll treat you to a drink. Can you stop talking?" Xiao Chun was really speechless towards Yi Xiao. This guy was simply a weirdo. At this moment, everyone was hurrying on with their journey. Only Yi Xiao was chattering nonstop. Could he not see that Gu Feng was clenching his fists not far away? Actually, Gu Feng had wanted to make a move for a long time. However, after thinking about it, everyone was still in danger. It wasn't too late to wait until they safely returned to the seventh realm's Black Palace. Because of this, Gu Feng forcefully suppressed the urge to beat Yi Xiao up. They did not stop at all along the way. Everyone also increased their speed to the maximum, rushing towards the seventh mainland at full speed. Originally, it took them 3 days to arrive at the seventh mainland. However, it only took them 2 days to return to the seventh mainland. Just as they entered the seventh mainland, Hong Lian caught up with them. When they saw Hong Lian appear, everyone bowed and greeted her. "Greetings, Realm Lord." After everyone left, Hong Lian and the seventh wilderness's will of the heavenly way fought fiercely for an entire day before they stopped. If Hong Lian wanted to leave, the seventh wilderness's will of the heavenly way would not be able to stop her. Hence, he could only watch helplessly. Hong Lian followed everyone's tracks all the way here. In the face of everyone's greetings, Hong Lian only waved her hand slightly and said nonchalantly, "Forget it. Let's go back together." As she spoke, Hong Lian deliberately glanced at Wine Daoist behind Xiao Chun. Then, with a flick of her finger, a gentle stream of spiritual energy entered Wine Daoist's body. Clearly, Hong Lian had also noticed Wine Daoist's situation. Although Xiao Chun had been feeding Wine Daoist healing pills along the way, Wine Daoist's injuries were too severe. In addition, his cultivation could not be unsealed, so his situation was not very good. At this moment, Hong Lian had personally taken action to ensure that Wine Daoist would not be in any danger before they arrived at the seventh realm's Black Palace. Once they arrived at the Black Palace, there would naturally be alchemists from the seventh realm who would systematically treat Wine Daoist. Of course, the prerequisite was that the seal in Wine Daoist's body had to be unsealed and his cultivation recovered. However, now was clearly not the time to do this. Everything could only be done after they returned to the Seventh Realm's Black Palace. Wine Dao's cultivation had not recovered until now. It was not because Xiao Chun and the others did not want to help Wine Daoist remove the seal in his body. It was because Wine Dao's cultivation had been sealed by the will of the heavenly way in the seventh wilderness. With the strength of Xiao Chun and the others, it was impossible for them to remove the seal. Only Hong Lian and Luo Li, who were at the same level as the will of the heavenly way, could do it. Therefore, this matter had been delayed until now. Seeing Hong Lian's actions, Xiao Chun thanked her. Then, everyone flew toward the Black Palace. With Hong Lian's help, everyone felt more at ease. After all, Hong Lian was at the Celestial Emperor realm. With her around, even if they encountered the powerhouses from the 7th and 8th wilderness, they would not have to worry too much. After entering the 7th mainland, it didn't take long for everyone to arrive at the Black Palace safely. On the main plaza, everyone exchanged some pleasantries and returned to their cave abodes to recuperate. As for Xiao Chun, he brought Wine Daoist back to his cave abode. Of course, Hong Lian tagged along. After all, she had to remove the seal in Wine Daoist's body. However, Yi Xiao didn't leave either. He also followed Xiao Chun to the cave abode. Seeing that Xiao Chun had returned safely, Hong Xiu, who had been worried sick for the past few days, was finally relieved. As soon as she entered the cave abode, she ran up to Xiao Chun and said worriedly, "You're finally back. That's great." Hong Xiu was relieved to see that Xiao Chun was safe and sound. Of course, the one who was most worried was Xiao Chun. After greeting Xiao Chun, Hong Xiu noticed her mother, Hong Lian, and blushed. She lowered her head and called out shyly, "Mom, why are you here too?" Hong Lian didn't blame Hong Xiu for her shyness. Instead, she smiled gently, ruffled Hong Xiu's hair, and teased. As the saying goes, a grown girl can't be kept at home. It seems like I'm no longer as important to you as someone else. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Chapter 1662. Hong Xiu immediately blushed when she heard Hong Lian's words. She shyly said coquettishly, "Mother, what are you saying? I'm not going to talk to you anymore." Hong Lian's smile deepened when she saw Hong Xiu's coquettish expression. However, she did not say anything. After all, she had to remove the seal on Wine Daoist's body first. His condition was not very good. Xiao Chun carried Wine Daoist to the room. Hong Lian then removed the seal that the will of the heavenly way had left in his body. Wine Daoist's cultivation had recovered, and his aura was no longer as weak as before. Now that his cultivation had recovered, his injuries were no longer fatal. He only needed to recuperate for a period of time to recover. Xiao Chun cupped his hands gratefully when he saw Hong Lian remove the seal on Wine Daoist's body. "Thank you, Realm Lord." Hong Lian had indeed been of great help this time. Without her, it would have been very difficult for them to safely return to the 7th Realm's Black Palace. Therefore, Xiao Chen's gratitude was sincere. However, Red Lotus did not seem to care at all. She had helped Xiao Chun this time because Red Lotus had begged her, and she did not expect anything in return. Besides, with Xiao Chen's strength, what could he possibly give her in return? Hong Lian smiled and teased, "All right, it's just a small matter. Take good care of her." Hong Lian clearly had other matters to attend to. After removing Wine Daoist's seal, she did not stay for long. She quickly left after giving Hong Xiu some instructions. After Hong Lian left, Wine Daoist showed no signs of waking up. However, as his cultivation recovered, Wine Daoist's injuries gradually stabilized. There was no need to worry about his life anymore. Perhaps Wine Daoist would wake up in a few more days. After feeding him some healing pills, Xiao Chun and the other two left the room and sat down in the courtyard. Hong Xiu, the silly girl, rolled her eyes at Yi Xiao and said, "What are you still doing here? Why aren't you going back?" Hong Xiu had never been nice to Yi Xiao. However, he seemed to be used to her attitude. Yi Xiao did not mind at all. "How can you say that? Let me tell you, I saved Xiao Chun this time. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have been able to see Xiao Chun. So, shouldn't you thank me? Well, this guy is at it again. Xiao Chun chose to ignore Yi Xiao after hearing what he said, while Hongxiu said in disbelief, "TCHU? Do you think Xiao Chun needed you to save him?" Hongxiu thought. She thought, Yi, Xiao Chun, brother. You, tell me if I'm telling the truth. You, Yi, Xiao, yes. You saved me. I promised to treat you to a drink, but not today. I'll call you another day. Go back and have a good rest. Okay? Xiao Chun said helplessly. Xiao Chun would naturally admit that Yi Xiao had saved his life. After all, it was the truth. Xiao Chun was very grateful. However, Xiao Chun felt helpless in the face of Yi Xiao's smug look. Xiao Chun finally understood why Gu Feng could not help but attack him. This guy was really asking for a beating. Xiao Chun did not deny that Yi Xiao had saved his life. Yi Xiao nodded in satisfaction. He stood up and smiled. All right, then I'll leave first. Brother Xiao Chun, remember to treat me to a drink. After receiving Xiao Chun's affirmation, Yi Xiao was satisfied and prepared to leave. Seeing this, Hongxiu personally sent him out of the cave. Yi Xiao waved his hand and said with a smile, all right. You don't have to send me off. Go back and accompany your brother Xiao Chun. After all, a grown girl can't be kept at home. Sigh. Yi Xiao, what did you say? Hongxiu immediately shouted in displeasure when she heard Yi Xiao's words. This guy's grandfather was making fun of her. Yi Xiao did not mind Hongxiu's displeasure. However, just as Yi Xiao was about to leave, Hongxiu suddenly said softly, Yi Xiao, thank you. Hongxiu actually thanked Yi Xiao. Clearly, she was talking about him saving Xiao Chun. Yi Xiao did not expect this silly girl to be so sensible. He looked at Hongxiu in confusion. Then, Yi Xiao waved his hand and left. He did not say anything and left immediately. In the next few days, Xiao Chun came to check on Wine Dao's condition every day. As his cultivation recovered, Wine Dao's condition improved day by day. 3 days passed in a row. One morning, Xiao Chun came out of his cultivation and went straight to Wine Dao's place. When Xiao Chun walked into the room, he saw that Wine Daoist had already woken up. He was leaning against the bed and seemed to be thinking about something. Wine Daoist only came back to his senses when he saw Xiao Chun walk into the room. He met Xiao Chun's eyes. Seeing this, Xiao Chun walked to the bedside and spoke first. Old drunkard, are you all right? Xiao Chun asked with concern. Wine Daoist's injuries were indeed very serious this time. Wine Daoist smiled and shook his head to indicate that he was fine. Then, he said with a hoarse voice, Do you have wine? All right, the first thing he asked for as soon as he woke up was wine. Upon hearing this, Xiao Chun retrieved a pot of wine from his space ring and handed it to Wine Daoist. After receiving the pot, Wine Daoist downed a mouthful of wine without hesitation. Then, he revealed a satisfied look as though this mouthful of wine had saved his life. After drinking the wine, Wine Daoist's condition was obviously better. Unsure if it was an illusion, Wine Daoist asked plainly. This is the seventh world's Black Palace, Xiao Chun replied. Upon hearing that he was in the seventh world's Black Palace, Wine Daoist's eyes glinted with a strange glint. As a matter of fact, he had already guessed that this was the seventh world's Black Palace. But now, after hearing Xiao Chun's affirmation, he felt rather complicated. He was still loyal to the seventh world's will of the heavenly way. But now, he was in the seventh world's Black Palace. What was going on? Wine Daoist let out a sigh and downed another mouthful of wine. He turned to Xiao Chun and spoke with a rare, serious expression. Xiao Chun, repent and be saved. You were once the first holy son of the seventh world. As long as you are willing to return to the seventh world, I will protect you with my life. Don't make the same mistake again. The first thing Wine Daoist did after waking up was to drink wine. The second thing he did was to persuade Xiao Chun to turn over a new leaf. Upon hearing Wine Daoist's words, Xiao Chun shook his head and said, I can't go back. Even if I'm willing, the seventh world won't. Wine Daoist didn't know the truth, so it went without saying that he couldn't understand that Xiao Chun wouldn't return to the seventh world. Not to mention Xiao Chun, the seventh world's will of the heavenly way wouldn't agree to it either. Collectible monthly votes, recommendation votes. Chapter 1663. The Wine Taoist did not wish to see Xiao Chan walk further and further down the wrong path. However, did the Wine Taoist really know what was right and what was wrong? Perhaps in his opinion, the seventh wilderness was right and the will of the heavenly way was right, while the seventh realm was wrong. As for the reason, the Wine Taoist probably could not explain himself. He did not shout at Xiao Chun like before. The Wine Taoist hoped that through his persuasion, he could persuade Xiao Chun to turn over a new leaf. That way, the Wine Taoist would be willing to pay any price. Unfortunately, after he said that, Xiao Chun directly said that there was no turning back. Furthermore, even if Xiao Chun was willing, the seventh wilderness will of the heavenly way would not be willing. What was going on? Seeing the confusion in the Wine Taoist's eyes, Xiao Chun said calmly, "Old drunkard, do you really believe that I would kill my father and wife?" This was not the first time Xiao Chun had asked the Wine Taoist this question. However, compared to the previous times, the Wine Taoist was clearly hesitant this time. The Wine Taoist had never doubted that the will of the heavenly way would kill Xiao Chen's father and wife. However, at this moment, seeing how calm Xiao Chun was, the Wine Taoist hesitated. Would he? Would Xiao Chun kill his father and wife? Was Xiao Chun such a person? Furthermore, if Xiao Chun really did kill his father and wife, why did his hair turn white overnight? The Wine Taoist fell into a dilemma as he looked at Xiao Chen's snow-white hair. On one hand, the deep-rooted trust and worship of the will of the heavenly way made the Wine Taoist unwilling to doubt the will of the heavenly way. However, on the other hand, the Wine Taoist understood his disciple very well. Xiao Chun was not the kind of person who would kill his father and wife. Besides, be it with his parents or his 4 wives, Xiao Chun had a good relationship with them and had no motive at all. On one hand, the Wine Taoist was unwilling to doubt the will of the heavenly way. On the other hand, Xiao Chun had no reason or motive to kill his father and wife. The Wine Taoist was in a dilemma. Upon sensing the change in the Wine Taoist's emotions, Xiao Chun sat down on the chair beside the bed. He looked at the Wine Taoist calmly with his blood-red eyes and spoke slowly. "Old drunkard, if I say that my family was killed by the seventh wilderness, impossible, that's impossible. The will of the heavenly way, the will of the heavenly way," the Wine Taoist interrupted. He definitely didn't believe that the will of the heavenly way would do such a thing. Xiao Chun wasn't surprised by the Wine Taoist's agitated reaction. After all, with the will of the heavenly way's position in everyone's hearts, it wasn't that easy to make the Wine Taoist believe his words. But regardless of whether the Wine Taoist chose to believe him or not, Xiao Chun had to say it. Therefore, after hearing the Wine Taoist's words, Xiao Chun said in a deep voice, "How is it impossible? Does the will of the heavenly way really represent the true meaning? Old drunkard, we were wrong about a lot of things. For example, the so-called immortal crystal spirit vein. Do you really think it's an immortal crystal spirit vein? Bullsh asterisk T. That's the power of all living beings. It's the power that all living beings gathered to fight against heaven and earth. The power of all living beings?" Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, the Wine Taoist was completely confused. In this regard, Xiao Chun didn't care how much the Wine Taoist would listen to. He immediately continued to speak. From everything he saw when he refined the power of all living beings, to how the will of the heavenly way killed his entire family, to how he was saved by Luo Li, and how he became the heir of the seventh realm, in the end, Xiao Chun told the Wine Taoist everything. Regardless of whether the Wine Taoist would believe him in the end, Xiao Chun just had to say it. Perhaps this was also a way to pour out his heart. After all, no one in this world would be willing to be wronged. Xiao Chun naturally hoped that someone would believe him. He told the Wine Taoist the whole story bit by bit. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, the Wine Taoist felt as if his worldview had collapsed in an instant. This feeling was actually the same as when Xiao Chun had just refined the power of all living beings and seen those scenes. It couldn't be helped. Countless years had passed, and all living beings had thought that heaven and earth were protecting them. But now, they knew that things were completely different. Anyone would find it hard to accept in such a short time. Even after Xiao Chun finished speaking, the wine Taoist was still in a daze for a long time. The heaven and earth had enslaved all saints and stripped all living beings of their ancestral spirits. It had made all living beings think that all living beings were born of heaven and earth, and that heaven was their father and earth's mother. All living beings had to worship heaven and earth. This had completely overturned what the wine Taoist had always known. Also, because Xiao Chun had refined the power of all living beings, the seventh will of the heavenly way had killed Xiao Chen's family. In the end, if it hadn't been for Luo Li's rescue, Xiao Chun would probably have died. His heart was filled with shock and confusion. Looking at the wine Taoist's expression, Xiao Chun didn't say anything else. He had already told the wine Taoist the truth of the matter without adding any details. As for whether the wine Taoist would believe him in the end, Xiao Chun couldn't do anything about it. It was as if his entire body had been petrified. He sat on the bed in a daze and didn't come back to his senses for a long time. Looking at the wine Taoist who was in a daze, Xiao Chun didn't say anything to disturb him. He let him slowly digest this information. He sat quietly beside the wine Taoist and didn't say anything to disturb him. After an entire hour, the wine Taoist's eyes finally regained some clarity. After taking a deep breath, the wine Taoist said in a low voice, "Can you let me be alone for a while?" The wine Taoist clearly didn't completely believe Xiao Chen's words. However, this was normal. With the wine Taoist's trust in the seventh will of the heavenly way, it would be strange if a few simple words could make the wine Taoist believe them. However, even so, there was a crack in the wine Taoist's trust in the will of the heavenly way in his heart. That was why he was conflicted and hesitant. Compared to before, the wine Taoist no longer trusted the will of the heavenly way mindlessly. Instead, he had a trace of doubt. After hearing his words, Xiao Chun nodded slightly. Then, he got up and walked out of the room. Now was indeed the time to give the wine Taoist some time to think about it. After Xiao Chun left, the wine Taoist was the only one left in the room. Gazing at the empty room, the wine Taoist fell into a dilemma. Heaven and earth enslaved all living beings and fabricated a huge lie to make the saints view heaven and earth as their parents and believe that heaven and earth created all living beings. The wine Taoist kept recalling Xiao Chen's words. After a few moments, he muttered softly to himself, "Is that possible?" It was hard for him to accept it in an instant. But Xiao Chun was his disciple. He had no reason to lie to him, did he? Besides, would Xiao Chun really do what the seventh will of the heavenly way said and kill his father and wife? Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Sword Master Bahuang. Chapter 1664. Xiao Chun knew that it would be impossible for the wine Taoist to accept all of this on his own. Therefore, this matter could not be rushed, and Xiao Chun needed to give the wine Taoist enough time. Moreover, the wine Taoist was in the Black Palace of the Seventh Realm. He didn't have to worry about his safety at all, so Xiao Chun wasn't in a hurry. After leaving the wine Taoist's room, Xiao Chun said to a maid outside, "Take good care of him." "Yes, heir." The maid replied respectfully when she heard Xiao Chen's words. Xiao Chun left the small courtyard where wine Taoist lived. However, as soon as he stepped out of the courtyard, Xiao Chun saw Hong Xiu waiting there. At the same time, Hong Xiu saw Xiao Chun and quickly went up to him. She smiled and asked, "How did it go?" "It's nothing serious. I just need to rest for a while." Xiao Chun knew that Lady Hong Xiu was asking about the wine Taoist, so he nodded and replied. She already knew that the wine Taoist was Xiao Chen's master, so Lady Hong Xiu was very concerned about the wine Taoist. This was what people often said about loving the wine Taoist. He didn't tell Lady Hong Xiu about his conversation with the wine Taoist. After all, it wouldn't be of any use, and the whole thing had nothing to do with Lady Hong Xiu. Lady Hong Xiu smiled and nodded when she heard Xiao Chen's words. Then, she accompanied Xiao Chun back to the main courtyard. Xiao Chun had already told the wine Taoist everything. As for the final result, Xiao Chun couldn't control it. After all, whether the wine Taoist would choose to believe Xiao Chun or the will of the heavenly way was his own decision. Xiao Chun couldn't interfere. Continue cultivating and becoming stronger. That was Xiao Chun's only thought right now. Only by becoming stronger could he possibly revive his family. Xiao Chun was still training. At the same time, seeing how hard Xiao Chun was training, Hong Xiu, the little girl, actually started training as well. If this scene was seen by Yi Xiao, he would definitely be shocked. It should be known that Hong Xiu, this little girl, did not like to cultivate since she was young. Otherwise, with Hong Xiu's talent, her cultivation would not be at its current level. She would have reached the great sage realm long ago. With Lady Hong Xiu's status, she naturally wouldn't refuse cultivation resources. Coupled with her talent, as long as she worked hard, her cultivation wouldn't be at its current level. Unfortunately, Lady Hong Xiu didn't seem to like cultivating since she was young. Even so, she was now already at the initial stage of the Supreme Saint realm. It could be seen that Lady Hong Xiu's talent was extraordinary. Cultivating with Xiao Chun and with Xiao Chun by her side, Lady Hong Xiu seemed to feel that cultivating wasn't so boring anymore. At least she could accompany Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun and Lady Hong Xiu continued cultivating. At the same time, Luo Li and Lady Hong Xiu were sitting in the study room in Luo Li's cave abode. Looking at Luo Li, Lady Hong Xiu said faintly, "Still no movement?" Hearing this, Luo Li nodded in response. "We've dragged on for too long. This won't do. We have to get the second wilderness to provide support as soon as possible. Only then can we create an opportunity for the other realms," said Lady Hong Xiu. "The second wilderness? Support?" If others heard what Lady Hong Xiu and Luo Li said, they would definitely be confused and wouldn't understand what they meant. However, if the 7th realm and the 8th realm's joint attack on the 7th wasteland was only a pretense, then many people would understand what was going on. That's right, the attack of the 7th and 8th realms was just a pretense. Or rather, it was a trap set up by the Hachibura Sankai, a trap that had been set up for a long time. Strictly speaking, this trap had been set up since the 7th realm began to secretly build the gate of the immortal realm in the 7th wilderness. With the gate of the immortal realm, the 7th and 8th realms had joined forces to attack the hinterland of the 7th wilderness, as if they wanted to take over the 7th wilderness in one fell swoop. But in fact, attacking the 7th wilderness was just a pretense. This time, the Hachibura Senkai's real target was the 2nd wilderness. That's right, the 2nd wilderness. According to the Hachibura Senkai's plan, the 7th and 8th realms would join forces to attack the 7th wilderness, and then force the 2nd wilderness to provide support. After all, just like the 8th wilderness, the 2nd wilderness was right next to the 7th wilderness. If the 7th wilderness was really in danger, the 2nd wilderness, the will of the heavenly way, would definitely not leave the 7th wilderness in the lurch. As long as the 2nd wilderness supported the 7th wilderness, the 2nd and 4th realms of the Hachibura Senkai would immediately attack and take over the 2nd wilderness. This was the plan of the 8 Desolation Immortal World. Of course, only the 8 Sector Lords knew about this plan. The others didn't know about it at all. After all, they were afraid that the plan would be leaked, so this plan had to be kept strictly confidential. Once any information was leaked, all their previous efforts would be in vain. Everything was going smoothly, but until now, the 2nd wilderness still had no intention of supporting the 7th wilderness. This made Luo Li and Hong Lian a little anxious. The 2nd wilderness, the will of the heavenly way, was really patient. But now, Luo Li and Hong Lian had to attract the experts from the 2nd wilderness to create an opportunity for the 2nd and 4th realms. It seems like we need to add fuel to the fire, otherwise the 2nd wilderness will not help. Hong Lian looked at Luo Li and said faintly, "Yes, it's time to add fuel to the fire," Luo Li said, nodding his head slightly. Nobody knew about the plan of the 8 world lords of the 8 Desolates Immortal World. Until now, the experts of the 2 worlds still thought that their target was the 7th Desolates. They didn't know that the seventh Desolates was just a cover. The real target was the second Desolates, which was right next to the seventh Desolates. Luo Li and Hong Lian discussed the next deployment. They had to attract the experts from the second wilderness as soon as possible. The battle outside was still in full swing, but this level of battle was obviously not enough to attract the experts from the second wilderness. Therefore, Luo Li and Hong Lian prepared to add fuel to the fire. It was best to escalate the battle and make people think that the seventh wilderness was in danger. This way, the experts from the second wilderness will of the heavenly way might be fooled. They were ready to launch an all-out attack. After Luo Li and Hong Lian's discussion, everyone from the two realms would have to participate in the battle. The scope of the battle was not limited to the seventh mainland, but to the other continents of the seventh wilderness. Of course, the younger generation, like Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao, would also participate in the battle. They would do their best to attract the experts from the second wilderness in the shortest time possible. They would complete the deployment as soon as possible and create an opportunity for the second and fourth realms. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1665. They were determined to expand the war beyond just the seventh continent. Of course, no one else knew about Luo Li and Hong Lian's decision. 2 days passed. Although Xiao Chun visited the wine Taoist every day, the wine Taoist was clearly unable to accept what Xiao Chun had said after their first conversation. After all, it was just too difficult to accept, especially for someone like the wine Taoist. After all, the wine Taoist had been by the will of the heavenly ways side ever since he had broken through to the immortal realm. Now that the wine Taoist was suddenly asked to inherit the seventh wilderness's will of the heavenly way, it was indeed difficult for the wine Taoist to accept. Xiao Chun did not say anything else when he saw the wine Taoist's reaction. Ever since he had told the wine Taoist the truth, Xiao Chun did not bring it up again in the next few days. Xiao Chun had already told the wine Taoist everything that should be said and should not be said. As for what he thought and what he decided to do, it was up to him. As usual, Xiao Chun went to the wine Taoist residence early in the morning after a night of cultivation. After a few days of cultivation, the wine Taoist had recovered quite a bit from his injuries. Although he was still unable to fight, he was able to carry out normal activities without any problems. Xiao Chun sat with the wine Taoist in a pavilion in the courtyard and looked at the wine Taoist's severed left arm. After some thought, he asked, "Old drunkard, what's the meaning of your arm? Why does it keep regrowing?" There were many healing pills in the seventh realm, and treasures that could regrow limbs naturally existed as well. Xiao Chun had even specially asked an immortal tier alchemist in the seventh realm for a pill that could regrow the wine Taoist's severed limbs. However, the wine Taoist still did not consume it after so many days. When he heard Xiao Chun's words, Taoist wine glanced at his empty left arm and revealed a rather complicated smile. "There's no need. It's meaningless. Moreover, it doesn't matter to me whether I recover or not. I'll keep it as a souvenir." He did not know what the wine Taoist was thinking. He could have regrown his limbs, but he was unwilling to do so. Seeing this, Xiao Chun did not say anything else. In any case, it was just as the wine Taoist had said. At his level, it made no difference whether he recovered or not, and it actually didn't affect his combat strength much. Sitting together, the two of them did not seem to know what to say to each other. As a result, the two of them fell silent after the wine Taoist spoke. Neither of them took the initiative to speak. They just sat together in silence. After accompanying wine Taoist for a while, Xiao Chun got ready to leave to cultivate. He stood up and said to wine Taoist, "Old drunkard, I'm going to cultivate." "All right, go ahead." Hearing Xiao Chun's words, the wine Taoist did not say anything else and simply nodded. Seeing this, Xiao Chun turned around and left. However, after taking a few steps, he suddenly seemed to think of something. Xiao Chun turned around and said to wine Taoist, "All right, old drunkard, Hong Xiao is holding a banquet in her dwelling today. She's invited the people who went to the dungeons with me to drink. If you're free, you can come as well." Xiao Chun had already said that he would treat everyone to drinks. This was also to thank them. After all, the trip to the dungeons was actually Xiao Chen's personal matter. However, Li Qiu, Gu Feng, and Yi Xiao had all done their best, so he naturally had to thank them. A mere drink was nothing. Moreover, after this incident, Xiao Chun had truly acknowledged the seventh realm. He completely regarded himself as the heir of the seventh realm. As a result, when he faced the others from the seventh realm, Xiao Chen's attitude was better than before. He was no longer as cold as before. He clearly remembered what Li had said back then. Because he was the heir of the seventh realm, no matter what he wanted to do, the seventh realm would definitely support him unconditionally. Since the seventh realm was so sincere to him, Xiao Chun naturally would not bring shame to the seventh realm. At the same time, as the heir of the seventh realm, Xiao Chun would definitely make the seventh realm more and more powerful until they overthrew the rule of the world. Xiao Chen's wish did not conflict with the seventh realm's goal. Instead, it could be said that they overlapped. Xiao Chun wanted to revive his family, while the seventh realm wanted to overturn the rule of the world. He took the initiative to invite the wine Taoist to drink. Hearing this, the wine Taoist thought about it and nodded. Okay. For some reason, the wine Taoist actually agreed. Actually, the wine Taoist had thought a lot over the past few days, but he still did not have an answer. On one hand, the deep-rooted ideology made the wine Taoist unwilling to doubt the seventh realm's will of the heavenly way. On the other hand, the wine Taoist did not think that Xiao Chun would lie to him. He could not find an answer at all. Thus, the wine Taoist also wanted to see what the others in the seventh realm were like. Were they as evil as the world said? Or were there other secrets? Seeing that the wine Taoist had agreed, Xiao Chun did not say anything else. He directly strode away. After a day of cultivation, it was evening. On the snowy mountain of Xiao Chen's cave residence, a banquet was prepared. Short tables and praying mats were already set up. This was the first time that Xiao Chun had officially invited the others from the seventh realm to drink since joining the seventh realm. In fact, in the seventh realm, such a banquet was very common. It was held almost every day. After all, those who could join the seventh realm were all experts. Apart from cultivation, they would gather together to drink and discuss the Tao when they had nothing to do. The invitations had been sent out long ago. Soon, the first person to arrived. It was Yi Xiao. Yi Xiao said with a smile when he saw Xiao Chun and Hong Xiu, who had been waiting for him at the top of the snowy mountain. TSK. It seems that I'm the first one to arrive. These old guys are really not enthusiastic about drinking. Yi Xiao was the first to arrive. As soon as he arrived, he smugly teased the others. However, just as he finished speaking, a cold shout came from the sky. Then, Gu Feng appeared in front of the three of them. Who are you calling an old guy? Yi Xiao, are you itching for a beating again? Yi Xiao's eyes narrowed when he saw Gu Feng's slightly clenched fist. He immediately smiled embarrassedly and said, No, I'm definitely not itching. I was just joking. Gu Feng snorted coldly when he heard Yi Xiao's words. At this moment, Hong Xiu came to Gu Feng's side and called out sweetly, Grandpa Feng, you're here. Yes, Xiu girl is so sensible. The anger on Gu Feng's face instantly dissipated when he saw Hong Xiu. Then, he said with a doting smile. He looked really doting on her. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 1666. Gu Feng treated Yi Xiao and Beauty Hongxiu in two completely different ways. Seeing how Gu Feng doted on Beauty Hongxiu, Yi Xiao mumbled gloomily, What a hypocritical old man. He treats me coldly, but dotes on Xiu. Sigh. Gu Feng was a little jealous. However, when Yi Xiao muttered, Gu Feng naturally heard it and snorted. Yi Xiao immediately shut his mouth when he heard Gu Feng's cold snort. He smiled embarrassedly and did not dare to say anything else. He knew Gu Feng's character very well. Gu Feng was someone who would fight as he pleased and would not hold back at all. Especially when it came to him, Gu Feng was even more ruthless. Gu Feng nodded in satisfaction after Yi Xiao shut his mouth obediently. At the same time, Xiao Chen walked up to Gu Feng and bowed slightly. Senior Gu Feng, please take a seat. Haha, okay. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Gu Feng laughed heartily and took his seat. As for Yi Xiao, he was very familiar with Xiao Chun and did not need to greet him. Xiao Chun did not pay any attention to him. Not long after Yi Xiao and Gu Feng arrived, Li Qiu and the others also arrived one after another. In the end, Wine Taoist also came to the top of the snow mountain and sat down beside Xiao Chun. When the banquet started, Xiao Chun took the lead and said to everyone, Xiao Chun thanks all of you for your help. If any of you need my help in the future, Xiao Chun will not refuse. Xiao Chun was indeed grateful for everyone's help this time, and his words weren't empty words. If any of them really needed Xiao Chen's help in the future, Xiao Chun wouldn't refuse. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Li Qiu smiled and said, Ha, Xiao Chun, you're looking down on us old guys. You're the heir of the seventh realm. Isn't it only right that we old guys help you? That's right, Xiao Chun. You're treating us like outsiders. I suggest you drink a bowl of wine as punishment. Yi Xiao also chimed in. As soon as Yi Xiao said that, the others also voiced their support. Seeing this, Xiao Chun didn't hesitate at all. He immediately raised his head and drank a big bowl of wine. Seeing Xiao Chun drink it in one gulp, everyone clapped and cheered. Then Yi Xiao also raised his cup and drank it in one gulp. Good wine. By the way, brother Xiao Chun, where did you get this wine from? He finished the wine in his cup in one gulp. The nightingale was definitely delicious, but it also felt a little familiar. He then asked curiously. Hearing Yi Xiao's question, Xiao Chun replied truthfully, It's all prepared by Hong Xiao. I don't know. Today's drinks were all prepared by Scarlet. Upon hearing her words, Nightingale poured another glass of wine and savored it carefully. Then, he looked at Scarlet in astonishment. Silly girl, don't tell me you're... Apparently, Yi Xiao had already tasted the wine. Seeing this, Hong Xiao nodded with a smile and said, That's right. This wine is the Highland barley wine brewed by Senior Tian Yud. Tian Yud etiquette, and there was no so-called hierarchy. Everyone drank and chatted together like friends. Please add, vote, recommend. Chapter 1667. Everyone seemed to be friends. There was no difference in strength, no difference in status. Everyone was together for the sake of drinking and having fun. To be honest, this was the first time Wine Taoist had participated in such a banquet. He had participated in many banquets in the Seventh Wilderness, but the feeling in the Seventh Wilderness was completely different. How should he put it? The banquet in the Seventh Wilderness was very depressing compared to this one. Everyone had a clear division in terms of cultivation realm and status. Moreover, there were many things that could not be said casually. Unlike Li Qiu and the others, they had no scruples at all and could say whatever they wanted. The atmosphere was very relaxed, and the Wine Taoist liked it very much. The Wine Taoist was a wine lover, but in the Seventh Wilderness, to be honest, the Wine Taoist liked to drink alone. He didn't like to attend any banquets. However, it seemed different in the Seventh Realm. Wine Taoist liked this feeling very much. Everyone drank together, putting aside their cultivation and status. They did not think about anything else. They just drank for the sake of having fun. There was no other purpose. He liked this atmosphere, but it was because of this that Wine Taoist's heart was in a mess. In the past, everyone, including Wine Taoist himself, thought that the Seventh Realm was a gathering place for evil people. They were traitors who went against the heavens, and everyone had the right to punish them. But now, Wine Taoist began to doubt his own thoughts. Were the people in the Seventh Realm really all evil and treacherous people? He could not help but have this question in his heart. Was it? But if it was, why couldn't he feel it at all? Looking at the smiles on Li Qiu and the others' faces, it was definitely from the bottom of their hearts. There was no trace of falsehood. They were truly happy. He grew more and more confused, so Wine Taoist did not say a word during the banquet. He just drank his wine silently. Although the wine tasted good, Wine Taoist did not notice it at all, nor did he have any interest in paying attention to it. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was already late at night. Yi Xiao was completely drunk. Thinking about it, Yi Xiao had been eyeing Senior Tian Yud's Highland barley wine for a long time. Unfortunately, Tian Yud did not give Yi Xiao too much. Now that he had a rare opportunity to drink to his heart's content, Yi Xiao naturally let go. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, they looked at Yi Xiao, who had fainted under the table. Everyone shook their heads and smiled bitterly. Two experts from the seventh realm, who were also drunk, looked at Yi Xiao and laughed loudly. Yi Xiao's heir, you can't hold your liquor well. Why are you hiding under the table? Didn't you say you wanted another 300 bowls? The two of them teased each other. Hearing this, Yi Xiao mumbled, let's drink then. Who's afraid? Bring it on. As he spoke, Yi Xiao stood up shakily. However, before he could open his mouth, Gu Feng had already arrived in front of him. He threw a punch at Yi Xiao's head and scolded him fiercely. What a disgrace. You still want to drink? Why don't you take a look at how drunk you are? Sigh. Our family is unlucky to have an heir like you in the eighth realm. Gu Feng said to Xiao Chun as he grabbed the drunk Yi Xiao and placed him under his armpit without waiting for Xiao Chen's reply. Xiao Chun, it's getting late. I'll take my leave. Let's drink again in the future. That's great. Take care, Senior. I'll send you off. Xiao Chun stood up and replied. Xiao Chun had intended to send them off personally, but Gu Feng waved his hand carelessly and said, no need. We're all family. There's no need for that. With that, Gu Feng turned his head to look at Li Qiu. He huffed angrily and said, Old man Li, next time I'll definitely compete with you in terms of alcohol tolerance. Anytime. Hearing Gu Feng's words, Li Qiu smiled and said, all right, I'll take my leave. Gu Feng straightforwardly threw down these words when he heard this. Soon after, he left with the already drunk Yi Xiao. After Gu Feng left, the others left one after another. The wine Taoist also returned to his small courtyard. However, to Xiao Chen's surprise, Li Qiu had not left yet. Although his face was red, Li Qiu's mind was still very clear. He looked at Xiao Chun and said with a smile, Xiao Chun, it seems like Wine Taoist still hasn't resolved the knot in his heart. Li Qiu had already noticed Wine Taoist. For the entire night, Wine Taoist didn't say a word and just drank alone. Hearing Li Qiu's words, Xiao Chun nodded and said, yes. Indeed, Wine Taoist still hadn't figured it out. Li Qiu said, I wonder if I can speak with Wine Taoist alone. After all, we're both from the seventh realm. Li Qiu had taken the initiative to speak with the Wine Taoist in private. Xiao Chun naturally would not refuse. He personally led Li Qiu to the courtyard where the Wine Taoist lived. He did not intend to disturb the two of them. Since Li Qiu had expressed that she wanted to speak with the Wine Taoist alone, Xiao Chun immediately turned and left. After Xiao Chun turned around and left, Li Qiu gently knocked on the door. Then, Wine Taoist's voice came from the courtyard. He said indifferently, come in. He thought that it was Xiao Chun. After all, apart from Xiao Chun, who else in the seventh realm would come to his place? Just as Wine Taoist turned around, he saw Li Qiu push open the door and enter. A strange look flashed across Wine Taoist's eyes when he saw Li Qiu. However, Li Qiu didn't care at all. He walked up to Wine Taoist and smiled. I didn't drink enough earlier, so I came specially to find you to drink a few more cups with me. He came specially to drink with me. Wine Taoist naturally knew that this was just Li Qiu's excuse. However, for some reason, after a slight exhortation, Wine Taoist nodded slightly and said, please. The two of them came to the pavilion in the courtyard and sat down. Li Qiu took out a jug of wine and 2 large bowls from his storage ring and said, although this isn't as good as before, it tastes pretty good. Try it. As he spoke, Li Qiu poured wine for the two of them and started drinking. Wine Taoist thought for a moment and finished his bowl in one gulp. After drinking 3 large bowls of wine in a row, Li Qiu looked at Wine Taoist and said with a smile, we should have met before, but you just broke through to the immortal realm. Li Qiu had originally betrayed the 7th wilderness and joined the 7th realm. However, Wine Taoist had just broken through to the immortal realm at that time, so the two of them didn't have much interaction. Wine Taoist didn't deny it when he heard Li Qiu's words. He had heard of Li Qiu before, but he only felt disdain for Li Qiu in the past. After all, he was a traitor. But now, Wine Daoist's impression of Li Qiu had changed, so he still nodded. That's right. We've met before. I've seen you from afar. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1668. Li Qiu and the Wine Daoist were both from the Seventh Wilderness. However, when Li Qiu betrayed the Seventh Wilderness and joined the Seventh Realm, the Wine Daoist had only just broken through to the Celestial Realm, so they did not have much interaction. Li Qiu smiled when he heard Wine Daoist's words. He then took a sip of wine and spoke. In this world, you can't say that what you see is real. Ears can lie, sometimes eyes can lie, and even the heart can lie. As such, if you want to know the truth of things in this world, the best way is not to jump to conclusions. Li Qiu said to himself. The Wine Daoist was slightly startled when he heard that. He raised his cup and took a sip of wine before speaking softly. You were once from the Seventh Wilderness. Have you ever believed in the heavenly Tao? Li Qiu had once been an expert from the Seventh Wilderness. Had he ever believed that the Seventh Wilderness will of the heavenly way? Li Qiu laughed self-deprecatingly when he heard that. Of course, I used to be just like you, maybe even better than you. Back then, I was the Seventh Wasteland's lackey, his dog. If he wanted me to bite someone, I'd definitely bite that person, said the Seventh Wasteland. Li Qiu drank another mouthful of wine. Seeing this, the Wine Daoist continued to ask, when did you stop believing in the heavenly Tao? The Wine Daoist was very curious as to what had made Li Qiu betray the Seventh Wilderness and join the Seventh Realm. When did Li Qiu stop believing in the Seventh Wilderness will of the heavenly way? Li Qiu did not give an answer to the Wine Daoist's question. He only said calmly, let's not talk about the past. Clearly, he did not want to think about the past. Speaking to there, Li Qiu suddenly raised his head and looked at the Wine Daoist. His gaze became serious. Black and white, right and wrong in this world can never be determined with just a few words. Many truths are not known by people. If you want to know what you should choose, you must first look at it with your heart and comprehend this world. There is no need to rush to make a decision. Sometimes, you should let yourself relax and settle down. Perhaps when the time comes, you will naturally make a decision. There's no need to force yourself to make a decision on certain matters. It might be better to let nature take its course. With that, Li Qiu finished the last bowl of wine in one gulp, then stood up and walked out of the courtyard. When they arrived at the entrance of the courtyard, Li Qiu's footsteps paused slightly. Then, without turning his head, he said faintly, when you don't know where to go and how to choose, you might as well calm your heart and relax. Since you're already here, take things as they come. There's no need to rush. Many things will naturally have their answers when the time comes. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Qiu's figure vanished on the spot. When the Wine Daoist heard his words, he coldly sat in the pavilion in the courtyard as he constantly pondered over Li Qiu's words. Since we're already here, let's just take things as they come. After a long while, a glint of understanding flashed across Daoist Wine's eyes as he muttered softly. For the past few days, the Wine Daoist had been thinking whether he should believe Shao Qin's words and join the Seventh Realm, or believe that the Seventh Wilderness will of the heavenly way return to the Seventh Wilderness. It was due to this hesitation, in addition to the fact that the Wine Daoist had been constantly forcing himself to make a choice, that he had been feeling very depressed for the past few days. But after hearing Li Qiu's words today, the Wine Daoist seemed to have thought it through. That's right. Since he couldn't make up his mind, why should he force himself? Since he didn't know what to choose, he might as well let nature take its course and calm his heart first. After all, even if the Wine Daoist stayed in the Seventh Realm, he wouldn't join the Seventh Realm, so even if he wanted to leave, no one in the Seventh Realm would stop him. Since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. Li Qiu's meaning was very simple. Since he couldn't figure it out, there was no need to think about it. Everything would be left to time. After he calmed down and settled down, perhaps there would be an answer. Li Qiu didn't tell the Wine Daoist that it was the same when he joined the Seventh Realm. He stayed in the Seventh Realm for a few years before he decided to join. In the beginning, Li Qiu was just like the wine Taoist. He didn't know how to choose and was very distressed every day. But as time passed, as his heart slowly calmed down, many things weren't so irritating anymore. After a conversation with Li Qiu, the wine Taoist seemed to have an answer in his heart and knew how he should choose. After a night of silence, early the next morning, Xiao Chun came to the wine Taoist courtyard as usual. He didn't ask what the wine Taoist and Li Qiu talked about last night. After all, Xiao Chun wasn't a nosy person. However, from the time he spent with the wine Taoist today, the wine Taoist today was very different from a few days ago. He was much more cheerful than before, and his state of mind seemed to have changed a little. Xiao Chun keenly sensed the subtle changes in the wine Taoist, but he didn't point it out. After all, it was a good thing. He chatted with the wine Taoist in the courtyard. Of course, they talked about some irrelevant things. The two of them consciously kept quiet about the seventh wilderness and the seventh realm. Just as the two of them were chatting, a servant suddenly rushed into the courtyard and bowed respectfully to Xiao Chun. "Heir, the realm lord has summoned you to the main palace." Hearing that Luo Li had summoned him, Xiao Chun didn't think too much about it. He nodded and then said to the wine Taoist, "Old drunkard, I'll be leaving first." "Okay, go." The wine Taoist nodded. Seeing this, Xiao Chun turned to leave. However, just as Xiao Chun was about to walk out of the courtyard, the wine Taoist suddenly called out to Xiao Chun, "By the way, Xiao Chun, get me 2 jugs of wine. My space ring is gone, and so is my wine." When he was imprisoned by the seventh wilderness will of the heavenly way, the wine Taoist's space ring had been taken away. It could be said that he had nothing on him now. Hearing this, Xiao Chun nodded without hesitation. "Okay, I'll get Hong Xiu to send it over later." Knowing that the wine Taoist loved to drink, Xiao Chun nodded without hesitation. He then left the cave residence and hurried to the main palace. Xiao Chun wasn't unhappy that Luo Li had summoned him. After all, after this incident, Xiao Chun had completely approved of the seventh realm. Therefore, if Luo Li had any tasks for him, Xiao Chun wouldn't refuse. After all, as the heir of the seventh realm, Xiao Chun naturally had the obligation to contribute to the seventh realm. It was impossible to say that he only wanted to take advantage of others without paying a price. At the same time, Xiao Chun wasn't that kind of person. "If you treat me well, I'll treat you well." That was Xiao Chun's personality. Please add, vote, recommend. Chapter 1669. Because Luo Li and the entire seventh realm treated Xiao Chun as one of their own, Xiao Chun had completely integrated into the seventh realm and accepted his identity as the heir of the seventh realm. Since he was the heir of the seventh realm, he naturally had to contribute to the seventh realm. Xiao Chun was not the kind of person who only wanted to take advantage of others without giving anything in return. After notifying Hong Xiu and asking her to send some wine to the wine Taoist, Xiao Chun went to the main palace alone. Coincidentally, outside the main palace, Xiao Chun met Yi Xiao, who had also been summoned by Hong Lian. Seeing Xiao Chun, Yi Xiao was also taken aback. Then, he walked up to him with a smile. "Brother Xiao Chun, were you summoned too?" Hearing this, Xiao Chun did not try to hide it. He nodded and admitted to it. Seeing this, Yi Xiao put his arm around Xiao Chun's shoulder and said with a smile, "Don't worry." "Huh, then let's go together. Coincidentally, I was also summoned by the eldest aunt." "Eldest aunt?" Hearing this, Xiao Chun was speechless. Yi Xiao was probably the only person in the eighth realm who had the guts to call Hong Lian, the realm lord of the eighth realm, eldest aunt. He thought to himself, this guy is really not afraid of death. Or rather, he's very resistant to beatings. He was beaten up so many times by Gu Feng, and now he's being naughty again. He did not care about Xiao Chen's expression. He put his arm around Xiao Chen's shoulder enthusiastically, and the two of them walked into the main palace together. However, when the two of them walked into the main palace, Hong Lian, who had been waiting in the main palace, could not help but smile. As a great expert in the immortal emperor realm, Hong Lian naturally heard Yi Xiao's words very easily. "Eldest aunt?" Hong Lian suddenly had the urge to tear Yi Xiao apart. Seeing Hong Lian's strange expression, Luo Li, who was sitting beside her, could not help but smile faintly. Hong Lian seemed to have sensed Luo Li's smile. She immediately turned her head and shouted angrily, "What are you laughing at? It's nothing. I just feel that Yi Xiao is truly a genius." Luo Li's smile did not diminish when he heard that. Hong Lian became even angrier after being ridiculed by Luo Li. Of course, she blamed all of her anger on Yi Xiao. That guy was asking for a beating. He was itching for a beating. She had already decided to find a good time to teach Luo Li a lesson. Otherwise, this guy would be getting more and more arrogant people. Luo Li was like the saying, if you don't teach him a lesson for 3 days, he will become a troublemaker. Yi Xiao and Xiao Chun quickly walked into the main palace. When they saw Luo Li and Hong Lian sitting on the main seats, they took the initiative to cup their hands and salute. Disciple Xiao Chun. Yi Xiao greets the Realm Lord. Yi Xiao could be presumptuous behind his back, but he still had to be respectful in front of his master. However, he did not know that Hong Lian had already heard his actions. Facing their greetings, Luo Li had a smile on his face, while Hong Lian's face was cold. However, she did not explode. After all, now is not the time to teach Yi Xiao a lesson. When the time came, Hong Lian would definitely let this brat know why flowers were so red. Luo Li waved his hand and spoke first. "All right, there are no outsiders here. No need to be so polite. Take a seat." Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao sat down on the main seats after hearing Luo Li's words. Then, Luo Li and Yi Xiao briefly explained the purpose of this meeting. In fact, the purpose of this meeting was very simple. They hoped that Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao could lead the younger generation of the 2 realms to participate in the battle. They had already decided to strengthen the attack on the 7th wilderness and attract the experts of the 2nd wilderness as soon as possible. In the past few days, the experts of the older generation of the entire 7th and 8th realms had been sent out one after another to various battlefields. At the same time, under the orders of Luo Li and Hong Lian, the attacks of the 2 realms were no longer limited to the 7th mainland. They had begun to spread to the other mainlands of the 7th wilderness. Just this morning, Li Qiu, Gu Feng, and the others, who had been drinking with them last night, were also sent out. They had asked Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao to come here in the hope that they would lead the younger generation of the 2 realms to attack the first mainland of the 7th wilderness. Now that the experts of the celestial realm and above and the entire 7th wilderness were gathered on the 7th mainland, it should not be a problem for Xiao Chun and the other young geniuses of the 2 realms to attack the first mainland. Of course, there was no guarantee that the 7th wilderness would not send reinforcements. However, the experts of the 2 realms were currently entangled on the 7th mainland. If the 7th wilderness sent reinforcements to the first mainland, the 2 realms would definitely have a decisive advantage on the battlefield on the 7th mainland. Xiao Chun did not have any objections after hearing the contents of the mission. He nodded in agreement and asked, "Where are we going? When are we leaving?" "As soon as possible. You could decide the exact time yourselves," Luo Li replied flatly. He still left the decision to Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao. This was also a kind of training for them. After all, they were the heirs of the 2 realms, and the young geniuses of the 2 realms had to listen to their orders. Therefore, Luo Li and Hong Lian had no intention of interfering. The exact time of departure was up to Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao. Xiao Chun nodded, but at this moment, Yi Xiao suddenly spoke up. Realm Lord, this time we're going deep into the first mainland. Shouldn't you give us some life-saving treasures?" This guy actually asked for treasures. Hong Lian's lips twitched. If it were any other time, she might have agreed. But now, it was impossible for her to give him any treasures. Hong Lian smiled charmingly at Yi Xiao and said, "Yi Xiao, you're the heir of the 8th realm. Your strength can be said to be invincible. Why would you need any treasures to protect yourself? I have confidence in you." Although she was smiling, the smile on Hong Lian's face gave off a cold vibe. Yi Xiao felt a little gloomy when he sensed the chill in her words. What was she doing? What was wrong with her again? Hong Lian would always give him some treasures to protect himself whenever he went out on a mission. But this time, she didn't give him any. And not only that, Yi Xiao even felt a faint sense of danger from Hong Lian. According to Yi Xiao's years of experience in seeking death, Hong Lian should want to beat him up. He felt a little gloomy. Why did someone want to beat him up again? Was he that eager to be beaten up? Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1670. Yi Xiao felt a faint sense of danger from Red Lotus. Seeing this, he cleverly shut his mouth. Although Yi Xiao was very cocky and liked to seek death sometimes, this did not mean that he was willing to do so. The situation was obviously not right, so Yi Xiao naturally had to be more obedient. He immediately cowered. Seeing this, Xiao Chun smiled helplessly. This time, Red Lotus did not give Yi Xiao any defensive treasures. Instead, Luo Li looked at Xiao Chun and smiled. Speaking of which, I was careless. Xiao Chun, take this storage ring. The things inside might be useful. Compared to Yi Xiao, Xiao Chun, the Seventh Realm's heir, was really poor. He cannot be compared to Yi Xiao at all. This time, Yi Xiao also gave Xiao Chun many treasures to lead the younger generation of the two realms to attack the first mainland. He had prepared these things for Xiao Chun long ago. After all, the 8 heirs of the Hachiura Senkai were all armed to the teeth. They had countless life-saving treasures on them. Xiao Chun was the only one who could compare to the other 7 heirs of Kunlun Field. Because he had joined the Kunlun Field halfway, his foundation could not be compared to that of the other 7 Kunlun Field heirs. As a realm lord of the 7th realm, Luo Li naturally had to ensure Xiao Chun's safety. Thus, it was understandable that he gave Xiao Chun some life-saving treasures. Xiao Chun did not stand on ceremony and directly accepted the storage ring. Then he cupped his hands and bowed. Seeing that Xiao Chun actually had treasures while he did not, Yi Xiao felt very upset. However, when he thought of Red Lotus, Yi Xiao could only sigh helplessly. It seemed that he really did not have anything this time. He didn't dare to say anything else. It was better to remain silent at this time. Yi Xiao was silent. Xiao Chun put down the storage ring. Then, Luo Li said, "Okay, you can go and prepare yourselves. When you leave, you can use the 7th Realm's teleportation array. It has already been built. It will send you directly out of the 7th mainland." There were many teleportation formations in the 7th World's Black Palace. Because of the war, Luo Li ordered people to draw a teleportation formation that led to the outside of the 7th continent. Using the teleportation array, Xiao Chun, Yi Xiao, and the others could break through the encirclement of the 2 desolates and successfully leave the 7th mainland. When they heard Luo Li's words, the 2 of them nodded in acknowledgement, after which they bid farewell and left. They suddenly received an order to attack the first mainland. Neither of them had any objections. After all, the war had already begun. As the heirs of the 2 realms, they naturally had to contribute. As they left the main palace, Yi Xiao followed Xiao Chun helplessly. He sounded a little disappointed. "Brother Xiao Chun, when do you plan to leave?" Clearly, he was still upset that he did not get any treasures. In response, Xiao Chun replied flatly, "The day after tomorrow. Let's leave as soon as possible." They were leaving the day after tomorrow. Hearing this, Yi Xiao did not say much. He nodded and said, "Okay, then I'll go back and gather those little bastards. We'll meet at the main square in the morning the day after tomorrow." "Okay." Xiao Chun nodded. The 2 went their separate ways. As time was tight, Yi Xiao also went to find the young geniuses of the 8th realm. Compared to Yi Xiao, Xiao Chun was much more relaxed. After returning to his cave abode, Xiao Chun ordered someone to call Yu Shujin over. She sat in the courtyard and waited for Yu Shujin. Seeing this, Hong Xiu slowly walked over to Xiao Chun and asked, "What's wrong? Why did you suddenly call Yu Shujin over?" Xiao Chun rarely took the initiative to call someone over. Therefore, Hong Xiu could guess that something must have happened. As she spoke, Hong Xiu did not stand on ceremony and sat down beside Xiao Chun. Hearing Hong Xiu's words, Xiao Chun did not hide anything. He immediately told her that Luo Li had ordered everyone to attack the first mainland. Hearing that Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao were going to lead the young geniuses of the two realms to attack the first mainland, Hong Xiu immediately said that she wanted to go along. Hearing this, Xiao Chun originally did not want Hong Xiu to come along. After all, Hong Xiu's identity was special. What if something happened to her? However, he could not dissuade Hong Xiu's insistence. In addition, Hong Xiu's life-saving methods were even better than Yi Xiao's. In the end, Xiao Chun had no choice but to agree. Seeing that Xiao Chun had agreed, Hong Xiu, the silly girl, cheered happily. At the same time, Yu Shujin, who had been summoned by Xiao Chun, quickly rushed over. In the courtyard, led by a maid, Yu Shujin strode in and bowed to Xiao Chun. "Greetings, heir. No need to stand on ceremony. Have a seat." Hearing this, Xiao Chun nodded calmly and gestured for Yu Shujin to sit. Seeing this, Yu Shujin did not stand on ceremony and sat down opposite Xiao Chun. After Yu Shujin sat down, Xiao Chun finally told him why he had summoned him. The day after tomorrow, they would set off to attack the first mainland. This was the order of the two realm lords, Luo Li and Hong Lian. They had handed the task of gathering the young geniuses of the seventh realm to Yu Shujin. At the same time, Xiao Chun also asked Yu Shujin to collect the necessary pills and various talismans in case of an emergency. He handed all the trivial matters to Yu Shujin. Hearing Xiao Chun's order, Yu Shujin did not refuse. Of course, he could not refuse either. Yu Shujin nodded respectfully and left to make preparations. After Yu Shujin left, Xiao Chun asked about the wine Taoist. After learning that Hong Xiu had personally delivered the wine to him, Xiao Chun nodded calmly. The night was silent. Early the next morning, Xiao Chun went to the wine Taoist residence as usual. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he saw the wine Taoist drinking in the courtyard. Perhaps because he had thought things through, the wine Taoist was in a much better state than before. He sat down beside the wine Taoist. Xiao Chun poured himself a cup of wine and spoke to himself. "Tomorrow, I will leave the seventh realm for a while and lead people to attack the first mainland." He did not intend to hide it from the wine Taoist. Hearing that Xiao Chun was going to lead people to attack the first mainland, the wine Taoist was clearly stunned. However, he quickly recovered and chuckled. "I will wait for you here." "Okay." Xiao Chun nodded. Knowing that Xiao Chun was going to lead people to attack the first mainland, the wine Taoist had mixed feelings. After a moment of silence, the wine Taoist finally spoke. "If possible, try not to kill the innocent." The wine Taoist knew just how much Xiao Chun wanted to kill right now, and there was no way he could stop Xiao Chun from attacking the first continent. However, the wine Taoist still hoped that Xiao Chun would stop killing the innocent and not commit any unnecessary crimes. Hearing the wine Taoist's words, Xiao Chun nodded and said, "I know. I will try my best." Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1671. After chatting with the wine Taoist for a while, Xiao Chun left. Although the wine Taoist was a little uncomfortable that Xiao Chun was going to personally lead a team to attack the first mainland, he did not stop him. He only hoped that Xiao Chun would kill as few people as possible. He knew that he could not stop Xiao Chun from attacking the first wilderness because Xiao Chun had said that it was an order from the two realm lords. Seeing Xiao Chun leave, the wine Taoist shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He did not know what to do with the seventh wilderness and the seventh realm now. Forget it. He would stay for the time being. Just as Li Qiu had said, there were some things that did not need to be decided in a hurry. Besides, the seventh realm had no intention of forcing the wine Taoist to join them. Therefore, the wine Taoist could stay in the seventh realm freely. After greeting the wine Taoist, a day passed quickly. The next morning, Xiao Chun and Hong Xiu arrived at the main square early. When the two of them arrived, the young geniuses from the seventh and eighth realms had already gathered together, forming two distinct camps. Although they were all Hachibara Sankai, the young geniuses from the seventh and eighth realms were not very familiar with each other. Both sides had their own pride and did not want to interact too much with each other. Seeing Xiao Chun appear, The young geniuses from the seventh wilderness all cupped their hands and bowed. Greetings, heir apparent. The number of people had increased by a lot. The 100 or so young geniuses who had openly disobeyed Xiao Chen's orders had all appeared here this time. During this period of time, Xiao Chen had directly cut off their cultivation resources. If it weren't for the elders of their families taking advantage of the situation, it was likely that they would have had difficulties cultivating. However, this was not a long-term solution. After all, their elders also needed to cultivate. Therefore, when they heard that Xiao Chen was going to personally lead a team to attack the first mainland, they all took the initiative to come. After what had happened last time, no matter whether they were sincerely convinced or just putting on an act, without exception, their attitude towards Xiao Chen had undergone a 180-degree change. They were now incomparably respectful. Compared to the respect of the people from the seventh realm, the young geniuses from the eighth realm were much colder. No one came up to greet Xiao Chen. After all, Xiao Chen was the heir apparent of the seventh realm and had little to do with the eighth realm. However, no one in the eighth realm paid attention to Xiao Chen. But they were extremely respectful and even flattering to beauty. Senior sister Hongxiu. The young prodigies of the eighth world bowed respectfully with smiles on their faces. She nodded and said in a low voice, "Yi Xiao." That heir apparent, drank too much. Hongxiu was startled when she heard these words. Immediately, a chill flashed across her eyes. This fellow was really too outrageous. He glared angrily at the prodigy who spoke and said, "Then why aren't you shouting? If I don't see Xiao in 15 minutes, don't even think about getting any better." In front of Xiao Chen, Hongxiu was definitely well-behaved. However, in front of other people, except for Xiao Chen, Hongxiu was definitely an unruly young lady. Upon hearing Hongxiu's words, several geniuses from the eighth realm immediately left for Yi Zhao's cave abode. Ignoring what happened in the eighth realm, Xiao Chen looked at the geniuses of the seventh realm, especially the hundreds of people whose cultivation resources had been cut off by him. Under Xiao Chen's gaze, these 100 over people felt a little uneasy in their hearts. However, Xiao Chen quickly spoke. "Forget it. That's the end of the matter. The cultivation resources will be given to you as usual. However, if there's a mission in the future, you must listen to my orders." Looking at the 100 over people, Xiao Chen, who had completely integrated into the seventh realm, said faintly. They obviously regretted it, so Xiao Chen didn't continue to pester them. After all, they were also from the seventh realm. Cutting off their cultivation resources was tantamount to destroying their future. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, these 100 over people were immediately overjoyed. Then, they all cupped their hands and thanked Xiao Chen. "Thank you, heir apparent." Xiao Chen didn't care about their gratitude. Looking at the more than 500 geniuses of the seventh realm in front of him, it could be said that all the young people of the seventh realm had gathered here. Xiao Chen was silent for a moment and then said in a low voice, "I don't care about you. I don't care what you think of me. But since I'm already the heir of the seventh realm, I'll try my best to make you all stronger. Not for anything else, but because we're brothers and sisters, I won't care about what happened in the past." This was the first time Xiao Chen had spoken his mind in front of so many young geniuses of the seventh realm. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. However, many people's impression of Xiao Chen changed greatly. In fact, as early as when Xiao Chen led the people to attack Yanfeng City, many geniuses of the seventh realm had already changed their impression of Xiao Chen. After all, Xiao Chen had directly given half of the cultivation resources of Yanfeng City to them. They didn't have to wait long in the main square. Soon, Yi Xiao was brought to the main square by several young geniuses of the eighth realm. However, at this moment, Yi Xiao clearly didn't seem to be fully awake. This guy was going to set off today. He was drunk last night. Naturally, Hongxiu didn't hold back and scolded Yi Xiao until he nodded repeatedly and admitted his mistake. It took some time, but it didn't matter. With Yi Xiao's arrival, everyone followed the plan and left the seventh mainland through the teleportation formation. They were teleported outside the seventh mainland. At the same time, The seventh realm had already prepared a starship for everyone to use. Stepping onto the starship, the geniuses of the two realms rushed to the first mainland. This time, Luo Li and Hong Lian didn't have any clear instructions to attack the first mainland. Everything was decided by Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao. In the starship, Xiao Chun, Yi Xiao, and Hong Xiu sat together and discussed the attack on the first mainland. Looking at Xiao Chun, Yi Xiao asked, "Brother Xiao Chun, what's the plan?" He wanted to know how Xiao Chun planned to attack the first mainland. Hearing Yi Xiao's question, Xiao Chun gently tapped his fingers on the table and said calmly, "The first mainland is smaller than the seventh mainland. The first mainland isn't any smaller than the seventh mainland, and we only have a little more than 1,000 people. It's impossible for us to attack the first mainland at the same time. We can only choose one target first. It's best if it's one of the great sage sects on the first mainland. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendations." Chapter 1672. This time, only the young geniuses from the two realms were responsible for attacking the first mainland. There were no more than 1,000 of them. With such a small number of people, it was like a drop in the ocean in the first mainland. Therefore, it was obviously impossible to attack all the major sects in the first mainland at the same time. Therefore, Xiao Chen's plan was very simple. They would attack them one by one and defeat them one by one. It was impossible to attack a few or several sects at the same time. Moreover, they had to guard against the seventh wilderness experts. Secondly, Xiao Chun had his own views on the purpose of attacking the first mainland this time. First of all, it was almost impossible to conquer the first continent due to the small number of people. As such, Xiao Chun had no choice but to set his sights on cultivation resources. The purpose of attacking a sect or a city was not to occupy it, but to rob it of its cultivation resources. This was Xiao Chen's idea for this battle. After all, there were too few people. If Xiao Chun and the rest had to send people to guard every place they attacked, it would be impossible to completely occupy the first mainland, even if each person guarded a city. Therefore, the purpose of this battle was not to control the first mainland, but to rob the cultivation resources on the first mainland. He believed that Luo Li and Hong Lian had the same idea. Otherwise, they would not only send the young geniuses from the two realms. Yi Xiao and Hong Xiu both agreed with Xiao Chen's words. They felt that Xiao Chen's words made sense. Yi Xiao nodded and said with a smile, "Then who should we choose as our first target? Let's go and see." "Whoever we meet," Xiao Chun said indifferently. There was no need to choose a target. In any case, the supreme sage sects on the first mainland would not be able to stop the attacks of the two realms' geniuses. Just Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao alone would be unstoppable on the first mainland without any reinforcements from the seventh wilderness. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Yi Xiao also smiled. Indeed, with everyone's strength, there was no need to deliberately choose a target. They would just go with whoever they encountered. The starship traversed through the endless starry sky. On the first continent, there was a continuous mountain range. This mountain range was very strange. It was shrouded in thick fog all year round. Perhaps it was because of the fog, the entire mountain range was black. Looking from afar, this enormous mountain range gave off a gloomy and cold feeling. This mountain range was actually very famous in the first mainland, not because of its uniqueness, but because this mountain range was where the 10,000 Hell sect, a great saint sect of the ghost race, was located. The 10,000 Hell sect was one of the few great sage sects in the first mainland. The great sage sect alone had as many as 3 of them. Naturally, their strength was not to be underestimated. Unlike the war that broke out on the 7th mainland, the first mainland was still relatively calm. The 10,000 Hell sect was just as usual. After all, although the two realms and the two wilderness were locked in a fierce battle on the 7th mainland, the 10,000 Hell sect was no longer able to participate in that level of battle. In addition, the battlefield was on the 7th mainland, so the 10,000 Hell sect was not affected at all. Many disciples of the 10,000 Hell sect began to cultivate as usual early in the morning. However, They did not know that a starship had quietly entered the first mainland and was not far from the 10,000 Hell sect. This starship was naturally not anyone else. It was Xiao Chun and the others. After several days of traveling, Xiao Chun and the others finally arrived at the first mainland. Just as Xiao Chun had said, they did not deliberately choose their targets. Instead, they chose whoever they met and left everything up to fate. After Xiao Chun and the others entered the first mainland, the 10,000 Hell sect was the closest great sage sect to them. Their target was only a great sage sect. As for the quasi-sage sects and saint sects below them, Xiao Chun and the others were not interested in them and had no interest in taking action. He Hongxiu and Yi Xiao stood on the deck and looked in the direction of the 10,000 Hell sect. Xiao Chun was very sharp. He had already sensed the aura of many experts in the 10,000 Hell sect. Xiao Chun's expression did not change much as he said indifferently, "Looks like we're in luck. There's a great sage sect not far ahead." As soon as they entered the first mainland, they sensed the presence of a great sage sect. Upon hearing Xiao Chun's words, Yi Xiao smiled and said, "When shall we take action?" "Let's do it now," Xiao Chun said plainly. Since they had already discovered the existence of a great sage sect, Xiao Chun did not intend to waste any more time. He immediately ordered them to head in the direction of the 10,000 Hell sect. The black starship slowly moved towards the 10,000 Hell sect. The 10,000 Hell sect was completely unaware of this. At this moment, countless disciples were cultivating in the 10,000 Hell sect. The 10,000 Hell sect was not a good sect. The cultivation technique they cultivated was very strange. It required the blood of living people as energy to break through. Because of this strange method, there were basically no cities around the 10,000 Hell sect. This was because the people who used to live around the 10,000 Hell sect had long been massacred by the 10,000 Hell sect. Almost every once in a while, the 10,000 Hell sect would alarm the surrounding cities and capture the young and middle-aged people, regardless of whether they had a cultivation base or not. As long as these people were captured and brought to the 10,000 Hell sect, without exception, they would all become nourishment for the disciples of the 10,000 Hell sect. Their blood would be used as a way to increase their strength. At this moment, in the various caves of the 10,000 Hell sect, one could see the experts and elite disciples of the 10,000 Hell sect sitting cross-legged with their eyes closed in a blood pool. The blood pool was rich with fresh blood, and the fresh blood was constantly being absorbed by them. At the same time, as they refined the fresh blood, a look of enjoyment appeared on their faces. They felt very comfortable. This was not a righteous sect. In fact, it was even more abominable than the Evil Path sect. In the entire first mainland, the 10,000 Hell sect had a very bad reputation. However, there was no other way. Who asked the 10,000 Hell sect to be so strong? Moreover, because of this special cultivation method, although cruel, the effect was very obvious. Compared to the other great sage sects, the disciples of the 10,000 Hell sect had a faster cultivation speed. At the same time, the combat strength of the disciples of the 10,000 Hell sect was also better than the disciples of the other sects of the same level. It was also because of this powerful strength that even though the 10,000 Hell sect was said to be hated by everyone in the first mainland, no one dared to provoke them. Looking for collection, looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendation. Chapter 1673. Due to their powerful strength, the 10,000 Hell sect, from the sect leader to the elders to the disciples, were extremely arrogant and domineering. Moreover, almost all the warriors in the first mainland knew that the people of the 10,000 Hell sect were known for their cruelty. As usual, the disciples of the 10,000 Hell sect were still cultivating. No one had noticed that a black starship was flying towards the 10,000 Hell sect. After about an hour, Xiao Chun and the others finally arrived at the 10,000 Hell sect. The black starship also slowly stopped above the 10,000 Hell sect. With the appearance of the black starship, the experts in the 10,000 Hell sect finally noticed the presence of Xiao Chun and the others. Standing on the deck and looking at the pavilions of the 10,000 health sect below, Xiao Chun could clearly feel that there was a strong, bloody aura constantly emitting from the depths of the 10,000 health sect. With such a strong, bloody aura, Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with a strange light. At the same time, Yi Xiao naturally felt it too. He frowned and said in a light tone, "It seems that this great sage sect is not a good place to have such a strong, bloody aura." Just as Yi Xiao's voice fell, an old man with a half-step great sage cultivation rose from the depths of the 10,000 health sect. He came to the front of the black starship and said coldly, "Who are you?" Yi Xiao did not know the identity of Xiao Chun and the others. When he heard this, he immediately smiled disdainfully and said arrogantly, "Mere ants don't deserve to know our identity. Ask the sect leader of the 10,000 health sect to come out." Yi Xiao's character had always been arrogant, especially in front of outsiders. Moreover, a mere half-step great sage cultivation was simply not worth mentioning in Yi Xiao's eyes. Even the great sage was nothing in Yi Xiao's eyes. He was already angry that Xiao Chun and the others had barged into the 10,000 prison sect. When he heard Yi Xiao's arrogant words, killing intent flashed across the old man's eyes. He looked coldly at Yi Xiao, and his tone gradually turned icy as he said, "Junior, are you courting death?" It could be seen that Yi Xiao was not very old, and in the eyes of this old man, how high could her cultivation be? He wasn't afraid at all. Of course, the old man couldn't sense Yi Xiao and Xiao Chen's cultivation at all. After all, they were both at the minor success stage of the immortal realm. It was normal that the old man couldn't sense their cultivation. It was also because he couldn't sense Yi Xiao and Xiao Chen's cultivation that the old man acted so unscrupulously and wasn't nervous at all. Otherwise, if the old man knew that Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao were both immortal realm experts, he would have wet his pants in fear. The ignorant were fearless. This sentence was very reasonable. It was because of ignorance that one didn't know what fear was. However, the old man's arrogance had clearly chosen the wrong target. With Yi Xiao's character, other than a few people who would dare to be arrogant in front of him, a cold smile appeared on Yi Xiao's face as he sneered and said, "You old fart. I've always been the one being arrogant in front of others. Since when was it someone else's turn to be arrogant in front of me?" As he said that, Yi Xiao slowly pointed his finger. He didn't use any immortal technique. It was just an ordinary finger. At first, the old man didn't care much when he saw Yi Xiao's action. However, as a platinum light flashed in Yi Xiao's hand, the old man's expression changed drastically. From the beginning to the end, he didn't take Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao seriously. However, as Yi Xiao attacked, the old man instantly felt fear. The difference between an immortal realm expert and a half-step great sage wasn't small. It was simply the difference between heaven and earth. Therefore, even if it was just an ordinary finger from Yi Xiao, the old man couldn't resist it at all. The aura of death instantly enveloped the old man's entire body. For a moment, his hair stood on end. He wanted to resist, but the old man realized that he couldn't muster up any strength to resist. He opened his mouth, obviously wanting to beg for mercy. Unfortunately, Yi Xiao didn't give the old man the chance to do so. The platinum-colored finger radiance flashed and pierced through the old man's glabella without any surprise. In an instant, he was killed by Yi Xiao with a single finger. Perhaps the old man had never thought that he would be killed so easily by Yi Xiao until his death. Moreover, the old man didn't see through Yi Xiao's cultivation until his death. He only knew that Yi Xiao was very powerful, terrifyingly powerful. He killed the old man in an extremely straightforward manner. Xiao Chun and Hong Xiu didn't say anything about it. In their opinion, the old man was courting death anyway. Perhaps he was used to being arrogant in the first mainland. This time, he kicked an iron plate like Yi Xiao. A look of disdain flashed in Yi Xiao's eyes. After killing the old man, he curled his lips and said unhappily, "He's just an ant. Brother Xiao Chun, you don't have to do anything this time. Watch me." He indicated that Xiao Chun didn't have to do anything. Xiao Chun didn't say anything after hearing this. Anyway, Xiaochen wasn't interested in the people from the Myriad Hell sect. They were really too weak. Seeing that Xiao Chan didn't object, Yi Xiao rose into the air and flew away from the starship. At the same time, the sky prides from the 8th realm also rose into the air. As for Yu Shu Jin and the other sky prides from the 7th realm, they didn't do anything because they didn't have Xiao Chen's order. Hundreds of young sky prides from the 8th realm stood proudly in the sky above the Myriad Hell sect under the leadership of Yi Xiao. This naturally attracted the attention of many experts and disciples of the Myriad Hell sect. Below, countless gazes from the Myriad Hell sect were fixed on Yi Xiao and the sky prides from the 8th realm. In response, Yi Xiao had a cold smile on his face and didn't change his expression at all. After a breath, a terrifying aura erupted from the depths of the Myriad Hell sect. Apparently, it had reached the level of a great sage. Along with the appearance of this aura, a middle-aged man quickly appeared in front of Yi Xiao. Looking at Yi Xiao, the middle-aged man immediately shouted in a deep voice, "Who are you? How dare you act so presumptuously in my Myriad Hell sect?" This middle-aged man was one of the great sage of the Myriad Hell sect. His cultivation was ranked among the top in the entire First Mainland. However, facing him, Yi Xiao still had a cold smile on his face. The disdain in his eyes didn't recede at all as he laughed disdainfully. "You're the great sage in the Myriad Hell sect? You're not good enough." First, he killed a half-step great sage. Now, he was speaking rudely. Hearing Yi Xiao's words, the middle-aged man's eyes burned with anger. "Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 1674. The middle-aged man glared at Yi Xiao with burning anger in his eyes. However, this middle-aged man was clearly not as stupid as the old man from before. In addition, Yi Xiao had killed the old man with a single finger. The middle-aged man was naturally afraid of Yi Xiao. He deliberately tried to sense Yi Xiao's cultivation realm, but unfortunately, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't see through Yi Xiao's cultivation realm. Could it be that this kid has an immortal realm cultivation? He couldn't help but be shocked. Previously, Yi Xiao had killed the old man with a single finger. This proved that Yi Xiao wasn't a weakling. Since he couldn't see through Yi Xiao's cultivation realm, didn't that mean that Yi Xiao's cultivation realm had surpassed the Great Sage realm? Impossible, right? How old is Yi Xiao? How can he be an immortal realm expert? Although he was shocked, Yi Xiao was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. Seeing that the middle-aged man didn't answer him for a long time, Yi Xiao said with a lack of interest, "Forget it. What's the point of talking so much with an ant like you?" After saying that, Yi Xiao was ready to attack. At this moment, the middle-aged man finally felt a terrifying aura from Yi Xiao's body. It had surpassed the Saint realm and reached the immortal realm. Yi Xiao was indeed an immortal realm expert. The shock in his heart could not be any greater. However, the middle-aged man had always been on guard against Yi Xiao. The moment Yi Xiao's aura was exposed, the middle-aged man immediately chose to retreat. At the same time, he shouted angrily, "Activate the Great Sect Protection Array." Previously, he had guessed that Yi Xiao might be an immortal realm expert, so the middle-aged man had always been on guard against Yi Xiao. At this moment, when he felt the terrifying aura from Yi Xiao, the middle-aged man reacted immediately. Accompanied by the middle-aged man's angry shout, a talisman array instantly soared into the sky. The light of the array quickly enveloped the entire 10,000 Hell sect. As a great saint sect, the 10,000 Hell sect naturally had its own sect protecting array. However, Yi Xiao did not care about it at all as he sneered. "You want to use a saint-level formation to block an immortal realm expert? I say, there must be something wrong with your heads." The protective array of the 1000 Hell sect was a top-tier Saint-grade array. However, it was obviously impossible for a Saint-grade array to block an immortal stage expert. Therefore, even though the array had been successfully activated, the middle-aged man's face did not relax in the slightest. At the same time, as the formation was activated, the experts from the 10,000 Prison sect also rose into the air and looked at Yi Xiao and the others outside the formation as if they were facing a great enemy. Another two people came to the side of this middle-aged man. These two were the other two, the great sage for the 10,000 Hell sect. The three, the great sage, appear at the same time, but at this moment, their hearts were abnormally heavy. An immortal stage expert. They did not expect that an immortal stage expert would come to the 10,000 Hell sect. At this moment, the three, the great sage of the 10,000 Hell sect, were extremely bitter. With the strength of the 10,000 Hell sect, it was impossible for them to block an immortal stage expert. They looked at Yi Xiao with fear. At the same time, the three, the great sage, guessed Yi Xiao's identity. If he was not from the 7th realm, then he was from the 8th realm. They did not expect that an expert from the Hachibara Senkai would appear in the first mainland. Shouldn't they be fighting with the experts from the two desolates in the 7th mainland? Why would they appear in the first mainland? Although they were puzzled, now was obviously not the time to be thinking about these things. Yi Xiao's appearance was definitely a disaster for the 10,000 Hell sect. Ignoring the shock of the people from the 10,000 Hell sect, Yi Xiao stood outside the formation and sneered. "Sigh, how boring. You guys are too weak." He was showing off again. Seeing that Yi Xiao was showing off again, Xiao Chun, who was still standing on the deck with Hong Xiu, said helplessly, "Don't forget to settle this as soon as possible." In Xiao Chen's opinion, Yi Xiao was too slow. Moreover, he was showing off for a mere 10,000 Hell sect. It was simply, hearing Xiao Chen's words, Yi Xiao smiled embarrassedly. Then, without saying anything else, he struck out with his palm. This time, Yi Xiao used an immortal technique. The spiritual energy gathered into a giant palm and instantly slammed into the 10,000 Hell sect's great sect protection formation. The formation withstood Yi Xiao's attack and, as expected, shattered. Without the protection of the array, fear flashed in the eyes of the 10,000 Hell sect's people. At this moment, the three great saint emperors of the 10,000 Hell sect shouted in unison, "Run!" They had never thought of fighting to the death with Yi Xiao. After all, Yi Xiao was an immortal realm expert. Fighting to the death with an immortal realm expert was simply courting death. They knew that the only way to survive was to run. They would run as far as they could. If they stayed, they would only die. Hearing the great sages shout, the disciples of the 10,000 Hell sect were stunned at first. Then, they fled in all directions. Seeing this, Yi Xiao said indifferently, "Do it." Hearing Yi Xiao's words, the hundreds of sky prides of the 8th realm standing behind him immediately attacked. As the hundreds of sky prides of the 8th realm revealed their cultivation, the people from the 10,000 Hell sect realized that none of these young people's cultivation was lower than the sage realm. This was simply a group of freaks. They were so young, but their cultivation was already so powerful. As the sky prides of the 8th realm attacked, Xiao Chen also said to use Shu Jin and the other sky prides of the 7th realm. "You guys go too." In Xiao Chen's opinion, it was not a waste of time to destroy the 10,000 Hell sect. Hearing Xiao Chen's order, the sky prides of the 7th realm also attacked instantly. For a moment, the entire 10,000 Hell sect became a battlefield. The disciples of the 10,000 Hell sect could not fight back at all under the attacks of the sky prides of the two realms. The disciples of a great sage sect naturally could not be compared to the sky prides of the two realms. At the same time, Yi Xiao was also fighting with the great sage of the 10,000 Hell sect. However, rather than a battle, it was more like Yi Xiao was torturing the three of them. The great sage joined forces, but they were not a match for Yi Xiao at all. In just one move, the three of them were completely suppressed by Yi Xiao. The three of them could not withstand the attacks of Yi Xiao at all. As they struggled to resist, the three of them shouted angrily at Yi Xiao, "Devil, the people of the two realms are all devils." They already knew the outcome of today's battle. Under the attack of the sky prides of the two realms, the 10,000 Hell sect could not resist at all. Hearing the angry shouts of the three, Yi Xiao sneered indifferently. "Devil? I'm afraid I'm not as good as you guys. Look at the rich blood chi of the 10,000 Hell sect. TSK. I really don't know how many people you have killed to be able to gather such a rich blood chi. In the end, you guys are not good people. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. This time, Yi shout and hold back. He uses a mortal skill and killed the great sage on the spot in just 2 moves. Blood rained down from the sky. The great sage of the 1,000 Hell sect fell one after another within a few breaths. The 3 great saint sovereigns had already been killed. As for the rest of the people below, their situation was not much better. Under the attack of the experts from the 2 realms, the disciples and elders of the Myriad Prison sect had suffered heavy casualties. At the same time, with the death of the great sage, the disciples of the 1,000 Hell sect lost their will to fight. One by one, they scrambled to escape. Seeing the disciples of the 1,000 Hell sect fleeing in all directions, the expert from the 2 realms wanted to chase after them. However, at this time, Xiao Chun and Hong Xiu walked down from the starship and said indifferently, "Let them escape. Just kill those above the sage realm." There were hundreds of thousands of disciples in the 1,000 Hell sect. As for the ordinary disciples, Xiao Chun wasn't interested in them. Moreover, even if they escaped, what could they do? They just had to kill the experts of the 1,000 Hell sect. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, the experts from the 2 realms gave up on chasing after them. However, they had no intention of letting those above the sage realm go. After all, Xiao Chun had already said that all those above the sage realm were to be killed. The battle didn't last long. In less than 2 hours, all the warriors above the sage realm in the 1,000 Hell sect were killed. As for the others, the experts from the 2 realms followed Xiao Chen's orders and let them go. After dealing with the experts of the 1,000 Hell sect, the next step was naturally to plunder cultivation resources. As a great sage sect, the 1,000 Hell sect should have accumulated a lot of cultivation resources. Everyone spread out and searched around the 1,000 Hell sect, not letting go of anything valuable. Xiao Chun, Yi Xiao, and Hong Xiu walked all the way to the depths of the 1,000 Hell sect. As soon as they passed through the main square, Yu Shujin strode to Xiao Chun. However, Yu Shujin's face was solemn. She looked at Xiao Chun and said in a low voice, "Heir, come and take a look." Yu Shujin wanted Xiao Chun to take a look at the new discovery. Hearing this, Xiao Chun didn't refuse. Accompanied by Yi Xiao and Hong Xiu, the group came to a dungeon behind the main hall of the 1,000 Hell sect. Who would have thought that there would be such a huge dungeon behind the main hall of the Wanyuan sect? However, when Xiao Chun and the others arrived, there were at least tens of thousands of people who had no cultivation or were at the lowest level of cultivation locked up in the dungeon. There were men and women, old and young. They were all captured by the 10,000 Hell sect and imprisoned in this dark dungeon. Their existence only served one purpose to the 10,000 Hell sect, and that was to use their blood to increase the strength of the 10,000 Hell sect's disciples. The fate of these people locked up in the dungeon was already decided. They would die sooner or later. Almost every day, they would see their companions being taken away by the disciples of the 1,000 Hell sect. After that, there was no news of them. Hence, when they saw Xiao Chun and the others, fear appeared in their eyes. They thought that Xiao Chun and the others were disciples of the 1,000 Hell sect and were here to take them away again. Just as they arrived in front of these people, a little girl of 4 or 5 years old walked out from the crowd. Her eyes were filled with fear, but the little girl still mustered up her courage and spoke to Xiao Chun and the others. "You bad people, there will be a day when you will get your retribution." The little girl's voice was still a little childish, but the hatred in her eyes was very strong. Looking at this little girl, Xiao Chun and Yi Zhao's expressions didn't change. However, in their hearts, they cursed the 1,000 Hell sect for being cruel. On the other hand, Hong Xiu came to the little girl's side with a pained expression and spoke gently. "We are not bad people. We are here to save you. Those bad people from 1,000 Hell sect have already been killed by us. Don't worry, you are safe." As she spoke, Hongxiu reached out to stroke the little girl's head, trying to comfort her, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1676. She gently stroked the little girl's head, and for a moment, the little girl was a little stunned. After all, she was still young, and she didn't know if she should trust her. However, her instincts told her that Hongxiu didn't have any ill intentions toward her, unlike those bad people. She gradually relaxed, and then her eyes became watery. She looked at Hongxiu as if she had been greatly wronged and said, "Is what you said true? You really didn't come to harm us?" "Yes, it's true. The 10,000 Hells sect is no longer in existence. You can leave now," Hongxiu said with a smile. Hearing this, not only the little girl, but also the adults behind her were stunned. They didn't believe that the 10,000 Hells sect would be destroyed, but the hope in their hearts made them unwilling to give up. Everyone present knew how powerful the 10,000 Hells sect was. Could the 10,000 Hells sect be destroyed by such a powerful great sage sect? They didn't dare to believe it, but when they walked out of the dungeon and saw the mess of the 10,000 Hells sect and the corpses on the ground, they finally believed it. At the same time, many of them had tears in their eyes. They didn't feel the slightest bit of sorrow towards the destruction of the 10,000 Hells sect and the deaths of the experts of the 10,000 Hells sect. On the contrary, each of them felt an incomparable sense of joy. The cruelty of the 10,000 Hells sect was deeply hated by these people, and the resentment in their hearts had long reached an extreme. Now that they saw the destruction of the 10,000 Hells sect, they couldn't help but feel emotional. It wasn't clear who took the lead, but soon, tens of thousands of people knelt in front of Xiao Chun and the others. They didn't care about Xiao Chun's status, and they all knelt and bowed. "Thank you for saving us, benefactor." At this time, these people didn't care about the status of Xiao Chun and the others because it was Xiao Chun and the others who had saved them. They were their saviors. Looking at the people kneeling in front of him, Xiao Chun said indifferently, "All right, take this money and go home." As he spoke, Xiao Chun distributed all the silver coins in the storage ring to everyone. For Xiao Chun, things like silver coins were simply useless. The reason why he had brought some with him was just in case. Compared to the mortal world, spirit stones were useless. This amount of money was nothing to Xiao Chun, but to the people present, it was enough to make them feel grateful. In their eyes, Xiao Chun was a good person and their savior. To Xiao Chun, saving these people was just a matter of convenience. After expressing their gratitude, everyone left one after another. They didn't want to stay in the 10,000 Hells sect for even a second longer. However, after everyone left, the little girl from before timidly walked up to Xiao Chun. She gently tugged at Xiao Chun's trousers and cried out with an aggrieved expression, "Daddy, father?" Upon hearing this, Yi Xiao, Hongxiu, Yu Shujin, and the others were stunned. What's going on? Even Xiao Chun felt the same. He was sure that he had never seen this little girl before, but she actually called him daddy. After a slight pause, Xiao Chun squatted down, looked at the little girl, and said helplessly, "I'm not your daddy." "No, you're my daddy. Luan Luan is daddy's daughter." Upon hearing Xiao Chun's words, the little girl refused to give up. Then, she desperately stood on her tiptoes, trying to hug Xiao Chun. She claimed to be called Luan Luan. Looking at Luan Luan's clumsy and strenuous appearance, Xiao Chun's heart softened. He immediately took the initiative to hug Luan Luan. After all, no one could be cruel to a 4 or 5-year-old child. Besides, Luan Luan was indeed very adorable. Although her clothes were dirty and her face was stained with dirt, it still couldn't conceal her cuteness. That pair of lively big eyes, chubby little round face, and chubby little hands all involuntarily made one's heart soften. Xiao Chun held Luan Luan in his arms. However, all of a sudden, Xiao Chun felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Images appeared in his mind without warning. These images were like déjà vu to Xiao Chun. They were images of the birth of the world and how the world wanted to anger all living beings. When he saw these images again, Xiao Chun also saw a mysterious power. This power was born along with the world and all living beings. It was a very weak power, but it was incomparably pure. This power wandered between the world and absorbed the power of the world and all living beings to grow. In the end, Xiao Chun watched as the power slowly took the form of a life form. After countless years passed, the power came to the seventh wasteland, and then to the first continent. Finally, it took the form of the Wan Wan. Wan Wan was indeed only 4 years old this year, but she had existed for countless years. She was an orphan and didn't know how to cultivate. However, Xiao Chun was sure that Wan Wan was definitely not simple, because she was born from a mysterious power that allowed the world and all living beings to be born. He had never encountered such a thing before. After a long while, Xiao Chun came back to his senses after being called by Hong Xiu. "Xiao Chun, what's wrong?" Hong Xiu asked with concern as she kept shaking Xiao Chun's body. Faced with Hong Xiu's question, Xiao Chun shook his head to indicate that he was fine. Then he looked at Wan Wan in his arms and saw that Wan Wan was also in a daze. She gradually regained her consciousness. "Did Wan Wan let me see those scenes before?" But, judging from her appearance, it seems like she doesn't know her own background. What kind of existence is Wan Wan? He had some doubts in his heart. How could such a pure and weak little girl be in existence that allowed the world and all living beings to be born? Looking at Wan Wan's confused expression, Xiao Chun was certain that she didn't know anything about him. Perhaps in Wan Wan's heart, she had always thought of him as an ordinary person. However, after seeing those mysterious scenes, Xiao Chun knew that Wan Wan had lived a very bitter life in the 4 years after she was born. If it wasn't for her extraordinary body, perhaps she would have died long ago. Xiao Chun didn't know what to say to Wan Wan. However, at this moment, Wan Wan, who had completely regained her senses, intimately hugged Xiao Chun and said in a childish voice, "Daddy, Wan Wan has finally found you. You can't leave Wan Wan behind in the future." As she said that, Wan Wan constantly rubbed her chubby little face against Xiao Chun's cheek. Her pair of small hands grabbed Xiao Chun tightly, as if she was afraid that Xiao Chun would disappear. Facing such an intimate Wan Wan, Xiao Chun could clearly feel that Wan Wan was very dependent on him. She really, really depended on him. "Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 1677. Although Xiao Chun was curious about Wan Wan's identity, he still found it hard to accept the fact that such a cute little girl was calling him daddy all of a sudden. However, looking at Wan Wan's adorable appearance, Lady Hongxiu happily hugged Wan Wan. Her face was full of love. However, Wan Wan kept struggling in Lady Hongxiu's arms. At the same time, her two short little hands kept reaching towards Xiao Chun. She was unwilling to give up and said, "Wan Wan wants Daddy to hug me. Wan Wan wants Daddy to hug me." It seemed like Wan Wan didn't like being hugged by Lady Hongxiu. However, at this time, seeing Lady Hongxiu hugging Wan Wan without any special reaction, Xiao Chun asked doubtfully, "Lady Hongxiu, don't you feel anything special?" Previously, when he hugged Wan Wan, he instantly saw those scenes. However, now that Lady Hongxiu was hugging Wan Wan, the two of them didn't react at all? Could it be that he was the only one who could see it? Faced with Xiao Chen's question, Lady Hongxiu shook her head doubtfully and said, "What feeling? I don't feel anything." Lady Hongxiu didn't feel anything strange at all. Hearing this, Xiao Chun was also certain that he was the only one who could see it. Unable to withstand Wan Wan's struggle, Lady Hongxiu could only put Wan Wan back to Xiao Chen's suspicion. However, she still said with some jealousy in her mouth, "Here, hug your obedient daughter properly." It was obvious that Lady Hongxiu was jealous of Xiao Chun. Wan Wan was so dependent on Xiao Chun, but she was very resistant to her. This made Lady Hongxiu feel very hurt. She was also a beautiful woman, and she was so gentle to Wan Wan. On the other hand, Xiao Chun was like an ice cube. However, Wan Wan liked to stick to Xiao Chun. This made Lady Hongxiu feel very unhappy. As soon as she came into Xiao Chen's arms, Luan Luan became obedient and hugged Xiao Chen tightly. It was as if she was afraid that Xiao Chen would abandon her. Seeing how dependent Luan Luan was on Xiao Chen, Pretty Red curled her lips in dissatisfaction. However, after a moment of silence, she opened her mouth and asked, "Hey, what do you plan to do?" Hong Xiao was obviously referring to Luan Luan. Since she was so dependent on Xiao Chen, what about Xiao Chen? Should he accept Luan Luan as his daughter, or should he find a good family for her? It was impossible to leave Luan Luan behind. After all, Luan Luan was still so young. Hearing Hong Xiao's words, Xiao Chen fell silent. To be honest, Xiao Chen was really a little annoyed that he suddenly had a daughter. Moreover, with Xiao Chen's character, it was probably very unreliable for him to become a qualified father. However, seeing how dependent Luan Luan was on him, Xiao Chen could not bring himself to do it. Moreover, in his mind, Xiao Chen had seen everything that Luan Luan had experienced in the past 4 years. As a lonely person, Luan Luan had indeed suffered a lot in the world of mortals. It could be said that she had suffered a lot of grievances. This made Xiao Chen's heart ache. God should not have let such a cute little girl suffer so much. Moreover, Luan Luan's identity was too mysterious. Xiao Chen always felt that he and Luan Luan were destined to be together. Xiao Chen and Luan Luan were connected by fate. After a moment of silence, Xiao Chen finally took a deep breath and said, "Since we've met, there's nothing I can do about it." After saying that, Xiao Chen gently pinched Luan Luan's cheeks. This was the first time that Yi Xiao had seen such a gentle side of Xiao Chen. Was this still the same Xiao Chen who pulled out his sword and killed people at the slightest disagreement? Xiao Chen had obviously recognized Luan Luan as his daughter. In response, Luan Luan seemed to have felt the change in Xiao Chen. After being pinched by Xiao Chen, Luan Luan said unhappily, "Daddy, don't pinch my cheeks. If you pinch my cheeks, they won't look good anymore." This Luan Luan was actually shameless. Hearing this, Xiao Chen smiled and said, Okay. I won't pinch them." After saying that, Xiao Chen released his hand. Luan Luan stared at Xiao Chen with her big bright eyes and said in an extremely serious tone, "Daddy, can you not abandon Luan Luan in the future?" After all, Luan Luan had already recognized Xiao Chen. Hearing this, Xiao Chen smiled helplessly and said, "Okay, Daddy promises that I won't abandon Luan Luan in the future." After receiving Xiao Chen's promise, Luan Luan nodded with a smile on her face. Then, she leaned against Xiao Chen's chest and fell asleep. This little girl slept very soundly. Perhaps it was because she was too tired. After all, although Luan Luan's identity was mysterious, she didn't know it herself. In Luan Luan's heart, she was a very ordinary little girl. Just like other children of her age, she would feel afraid, lonely, and miss her parents. Even though she was asleep, Luan Luan's hands still held tightly on a Xiao Chen. At the same time, in her sleep, Luan Luan mumbled, "Daddy, you can't abandon Luan Luan. You promised Luan Luan that you won't abandon Luan Luan." Hearing Luan Luan's sleep talk, Xiao Chen's eyes became even more gentle. This little girl was really lovable, but at the same time, she was also very lovable. At the side, when Hong Xiao saw Luan Luan fall asleep in Xiao Chen's arms, a trace of light flashed across her eyes. The corners of her mouth curled up into a bright smile. No one knew what she was thinking. Xiao Chen didn't notice the change in Hong Xiao's expression. At this moment, he glanced at the dirty Luan Luan and said to Yu Shujin, "Send someone to the surrounding cities to buy a few sets of Luan Luan's clothes." As a grown man, he naturally didn't have Luan Luan's favorite clothes on him. Therefore, Xiao Chen directly asked Yu Shujin to send someone to buy some. After hearing Xiao Chen's order, Yu Shujin didn't waste any time. She immediately said to the person beside her, "Please buy a few sets of Luan Luan's clothes." Without any warning or preparation, Xiao Chen suddenly had such a cute daughter. Of course, other people only felt that Luan Luan was cute and pitiful. However, Only Xiao Chun knew that Luan Luan was definitely not simple. He had already ordered someone to buy clothes for Luan Luan. At the same time, two of the people who had been searching the 10,000 Hells sect previously came before Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao. They bowed respectfully and said, "Heir, we found more than 1,000 blood pawns in the 10,000 Hells sect." They found more than 1,000 blood pawns in the 10,000 Hells sect. These blood pawns were obviously used by the experts and elite disciples of the 10,000 Hells sect to cultivate. They contained pure energy. Of course, there was no need to explain how these blood pawns were formed. Anyway, it was incomparably cruel. Hearing this, Yi Xiao looked at Xiao Chun and said, "Brother Xiao Chun, what should we do? We can't take the blood pawns away." Naturally, these blood pawns couldn't be taken away. Hearing this, Xiao Chun didn't hesitate too much. He immediately said calmly, "Let's first gather the cultivation resources together. As for the blood pawns, we'll just directly refine them. These blood pawns are all treasures. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation." Chapter 1678. These blood pools were treasures, and they were the foundation of the 10,000 Hells sect strength. Therefore, Xiao Chun had no intention of wasting these blood pools. Although these pools of blood were formed by the condensation of countless lives and looked a little cruel, Xiao Chun wouldn't give up on using them just because of how cruel they looked. Xiao Chun would not take the initiative to do such a cruel thing, but if there was such an opportunity, Xiao Chun would not reject it. Hearing Xiao Chun's words, the Seventh Realm's geniuses nodded and went to make the arrangements. There were hundreds of thousands of disciples in the 10,000 Hells sect, but there were only thousands of blood pools. Moreover, these blood pools were of different sizes, and their grades were very clear. In terms of the purest and richest energy, it was naturally the blood pools that belonged to the great sage of the 10,000 Hells sect. They were all at the great sage realm, so their blood pools were naturally the best in the entire 10,000 Hells sect. Without any dispute, these three blood pools were naturally divided between Xiao Chun, Yi Xiao, and Hong Xiao. The three of them sat on the three best blood pools, and the rest of the blood pools were distributed according to the strength of the geniuses from the two realms. The stronger one was, the higher his cultivation, the better the blood pool he would be allocated. On the other hand, if he was the weakest, he would naturally be allocated the worst blood pool. As for the distribution of the blood pools, Xiao Chun completely left it to Yu Shujin to decide. Along the way, they came to the blood pools that belonged to the great sage of the 10,000 Hells sect. Xiao Chun and the other two looked at the three blood pools with excitement in their eyes. They could feel that the energy in the blood pools was extremely pure, and there was no need to return it. If they could refine this energy, it would definitely be of great benefit to the three of them. I didn't expect such a pleasant surprise. Yi Xiao could not help but say excitedly as he looked at the blood pools in front of him. The three of them were not pedantic people. No matter how these blood pools were formed, now that they were in front of them, they would definitely not let go of this opportunity to improve their strength. Without hesitation, the three of them immediately chose a blood pool and began to cultivate in seclusion. In fact, the energy of the three blood pools was basically the same. Xiao Chun chose one of them and carried Luan Luan into the stone room where the blood pool was located. The small stone room was almost completely filled with blood pools, and there were only a few empty places left for people to rest. Xiao Chun put Luan 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 beside the blood pool. Luan 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 was sound asleep, and Xiao Chun did not wake her up. However, Luan Luan was not afraid of it at all. Seeing that Xiao Chun had stopped cultivating, Luan Luan ran to Xiao Chun happily. Xiao Chun also very gently carried Luan Luan. Luan Luan was not afraid of Xiao Chun's pressure at all. Moreover, His pressure did not seem to have any effect on Luan Luan. One must know that Luan Luan did not have a certain cultivation base. However, she was not afraid of the pressure of the immortal realm. This was indeed very extraordinary. No cultivation base? Thinking of this, Xiao Chun was stunned. Then, he looked at Luan Luan and said, Luan Luan, Father will teach you how to cultivate, okay? In the past, because there was no one to teach her, Luan Luan had never cultivated. Now that Luan Luan had become his daughter, Xiao Chun naturally had to teach her how to cultivate. Thinking of Xiao Chun's daughter, it was impossible for her to be an ordinary person without any cultivation base. However, it was really strange. Luan Luan's identity was mysterious and special. However, she did not have any cultivation base. This was something that Xiao Chun could not figure out. Moreover, Xiao Chun was not sure if it would be useful to teach Luan Luan using the cultivation methods of human warriors. He was not sure, but it should not be a problem to give it a try. At most, if it did not work, he would think of other ways. However, after hearing that Xiao Chun wanted to teach her how to cultivate, Luan Luan pouted and said, No, cultivating is boring. Luan Luan does not want to cultivate. This little girl did not like to cultivate. Xiao Chun was stunned when he heard this, but then he said softly, Luan Luan, cultivating martial arts is something that everyone has to do. Moreover, if you don't want to cultivate, what will happen to you? How will you protect Father in the future? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. He sensed the changes in everyone's remnant souls in the necklace. Xiao Chen almost jumped up when he sensed it. Everyone's remnant souls were indeed recovering. Although it was not as fast as before, they were indeed recovering. They were recovering very slowly, and all of this was due to Luan Luan's efforts. Luan Luan's identity was still unknown, but it was undeniable that Luan Luan had the ability to restore remnant souls. Xiao Chun was overjoyed. He immediately hung the necklace around Luan Luan's neck. Since Luan Luan had the ability to restore remnant souls, this necklace was obviously much better with Luan Luan than with him. Although he did not know how long it would take for everyone's remnant souls to recover, as long as they were recovering, there was hope. Luan Luan did not understand why Xiao Chun suddenly hung the necklace around her neck. Xiao Chun smiled and said, Luan Luan, this necklace is very important to Father. Those who live in it are Father's relatives, so you must take good care of it. Don't let it be damaged. Father's relatives? But why do they live in the necklace? Luan Luan asked in confusion. Since she did not understand Xiao Chen's meaning, Xiao Chun could only use the simplest words to explain it to Luan Luan. Because they have all suffered heavy injuries, so they need to recuperate in the necklace. Luan Luan can heal their injuries, so Father is giving this necklace to you. However, Luan Luan must be careful. Don't lose it or let it be damaged, understand? Xiao Chun gently exhorted. Luan Luan nodded heavily and said, Yes, Luan Luan will definitely be careful. Luan Luan might not understand Xiao Chen's meaning, but Luan Luan knew that this necklace was very important to Father, so she must protect it well. Hearing Luan Luan's answer, Xiao Chen smiled and patted her head. Yes, Luan Luan is such a good girl. All right, Daddy still needs to cultivate for a while. You can play by yourself. Daddy will take you to wash up and change into new clothes later, okay? Okay. Hearing that Xiao Chun needed to cultivate, Luan Luan nodded obediently. Then, she really did not disturb Xiao Chun and went to study the necklace by herself. In Luan Luan's opinion, this necklace was the first thing her father had given her. Moreover, it was very important to her father, so Luan Luan also attached great importance to this necklace. Sitting not far from Xiao Chun, Luan Luan looked at the necklace on her neck and said in a childish voice, Daddy said that all of you are family and that all of you have suffered serious injuries. But don't worry, Luan Luan will definitely protect all of you. But all of you have to recover quickly so that Daddy will be happy. Luan Luan obviously did not know that she could recover the strength of her remnant soul. The little girl only knew that this necklace was very, very important, and that she must protect it well. Luan Luan's ability was indeed a pleasant surprise for Xiao Chun.